Chapter 226. He really was faking it. Zheng Tan looked at the people below through the cracks in the wooden boards. When the three people came in, Zheng Tan thought that the person who was tied up was an immature rich second generation with a childish temper. Coupled with the fact that he was crying and snot after being beaten up, anyone would think that he was a good-for-nothing wastrel. Not everyone could cry to such an effect. Comparing the huge contrast before and after, Zheng Tan felt that this person could simply win an Academy Award. Moreover, it would be fine if he only had acting skills, but he really didn't think that this person could hide it so well. The rope that was tied up had been easily untied when Zheng Tan wasn't paying attention. This wasn't something that an ordinary person could do. At the same time, if he could untie the rope so quickly, how could he be beaten black and blue and put himself in such a difficult situation? Either he was a ruthless person, or he was a lunatic. Zheng Tan stared at the person below. The person below was chewing the steamed bun in his hand while staring at Zheng Tan. "Who are you?" the person asked. "Maybe we can cooperate. I have no interest in that batch of goods. If you want it, I can give it to you." Zheng Tan didn't know what the person was talking about. This word definitely wasn't referring to the batch of inferior food that Zheng Tan had seen. However, he could also guess that Walnut Senior's goal was probably that so-called goods. Then, if this person wasn't here for the goods, why was he here? Seeing that there was no movement or response from above, the person stuffed the last bit of steamed bun into his mouth. He wiped his hands on his green cotton shirt, then jumped onto the table on the side and pushed at the wooden ceiling. Zheng Tan quickly left the place when he moved. He left the area of the room and hid behind a log, listening to the movement over there. The person didn't seem to have any intention of pushing the wooden ceiling open to leave. After a while, Zheng Tan heard the sound of a door lock. Looking down from the slit, he saw that the person's door had been opened a crack. This was the biggest crack that could be opened before the door was unlocked. The man stretched out 2 fingers, holding something between them, towards the keyhole of the lock. After seeing Air Mao pick locks, Zheng Tan wasn't surprised to see this person's behavior. In this world, there were still many capable people. A few seconds later, the man unlocked the door and came out of the room. He looked around and then searched the surrounding rooms one by one. Zheng Tan didn't know what he was looking for. He was curious, so he followed him from above. Zheng Tan did not follow too closely. He was still mostly on guard against that person. With that kind of skill, he should not be worse than Air Mao. This person hid deeper than Air Mao, so Zheng Tan had to be on guard. After looking through a few rooms, the man entered the room with the goods. The lock was a piece of cake for him. Zheng Tan saw the man rummaging through the open boxes. Then he opened a box sealed with tape and rummaged through it again. He took out a bag of XX milk tea, tore open a small opening, sniffed it, and then dipped it in his mouth and tasted it. Zheng Tan looked at the man's actions and guessed that there was something else inside. And that the inferior food was just a cover for these things? As for the thing that the man was holding, could it be some kind of illegal drug? If that was the case, then the place on the mountain was probably responsible for the production. No wonder Walnut wanted to take the risk. The man changed his angle so that his back was facing Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan could not see what the man was doing. After about a minute, the man looked up at Zheng Tan and asked in a low voice, as if he was talking to himself, "What are you?" When he pushed the wooden ceiling, he found that the wooden ceiling was weak. It could not withstand the weight of an adult human. Furthermore, the man was able to move freely on it. It did not seem like something a human could do. After the man looked for something, he did not stay for long and went downstairs. Zheng Tan waited for a while. When he did not hear any movement downstairs, he lifted the wooden ceiling and went downstairs carefully. Even though she didn't hear anything earlier, when she went downstairs, Zheng Tan saw a person lying on the ground. He was still breathing, but his hands were tied up. The rope used to tie him up was the same one used to tie up the red-haired man. Looking around, Zheng Tan walked over to take a look at the rooms. Other than a few bedrooms, a kitchen, and a toilet, there was only the surveillance room on the first floor. There was a person lying in the bedroom. He was also tied up there and had lost his senses. As for the surveillance room, the man in the gray coat was lying on the ground. The three of them had one thing in common. Their faces were beaten very badly. As for whether they had been beaten up in other places, Zheng Tan could not tell. The red-haired man was fiddling with a USB drive in the surveillance room. Soon, the man pulled out the USB drive and walked out. He took out an earpiece from somewhere and listened to something. Then, he frowned and looked up at the mountain. He walked faster. At this moment, the man had put on his leather coat and was about to leave. However, after taking a few steps, the man suddenly stopped and pulled out a dagger. It was the dagger that he had picked up in the house. Zheng Tan was looking outside from a window on the first floor. When he realized that something was wrong, he immediately ran out. A shadow rushed at the red-haired man from the side. The red-haired man was about to swing his knife, but another shadow rushed out and blocked him. He Jin was forced to stop. He looked at Zheng Tan in confusion. He did not understand why the cat was blocking him. The red-haired man looked at the black cat in the middle and maintained his previous posture. After a few seconds, he put away the dagger and raised his eyebrows. "You're the one on the wooden floor?" Zheng Tan pulled his ears and stared at the man. He had no doubt that if He Jin had really jumped up, he would have been killed by the dagger. However, He Jin was still growling behind him. It seemed that he was unwilling to give up and wanted to jump up again. Zheng Tan wanted to turn around and slap He Jin to make him behave, but he did not dare to move his eyes away from the man in front of him. He could tell that the man was skilled from how he had taken down the people in the room without making a sound. He did not kill anyone because he did not want to get involved in a lawsuit. However, not killing people did not mean that he would not kill dogs and cats. The man did want to kill He Jin. However, Zheng Tan did not feel any killing intent from the man's eyes. He was more curious and sizing him up. The man stared at Zheng Tan for a while. Then he played with the dagger in his hand, put it away, and left. After the man left, Zheng Tan breathed a sigh of relief. Zheng Tan listened to the surroundings. He did not sense anyone approaching, so he walked back into the room. He Jin hesitated for a while before following him. To him, most of the time, he would just follow orders. It was rare to see someone like this black cat who always did things its own way. However, He Jin did not have a better choice, so he might as well follow Zhang Heng. When Zheng Tan came out of the room, he saw that the cameras could be turned off. As for the people in the room, Zheng Tan did not know when they would wake up. It would be troublesome if they woke up now, so he had to do something. After looking at them one by one, Zheng Tan grabbed the pants of the man who had fallen down the stairs and dragged him to the room. There was a bedroom there, and there was another person lying in there. Zheng Tan decided to leave them there and lock the door. Even if they woke up, they would not be able to come out for a while. He Jin saw this and bit the pants of the other man in the room. He followed Zheng Tan and dragged him to the room. Seeing that one of them was about to wake up, Zheng Tan looked around and grabbed a wooden chair next to him and knocked on it. The person who was about to open his eyes fainted again. Zheng Tan searched the three of them and took out a bunch of keys. She found the lock and locked the door. He Jin was squatting at the side, watching the black cat jumping up and down. He did not understand what the cat was doing, but he felt that the cat was doing the right thing. He Jin moved his ears and looked in a direction. After the door was locked, Zheng Tan looked at the door as well. They did not close the door when they came in, so He Jin was closer to the door than Zheng Tan was, so he could sense the movement outside. The wind blew in, and He Jin smelled the scent of the people outside. Woof! He Jin barked. When Zheng Tan saw He Jin wagging his tail, his nervousness dissipated. As expected, after He Jin barked, a head popped in from the door. It was Mao. F***CK. Why are the two of you here? Mao came down the mountain from another route, so he did not pass by the place where He Jin was waiting. Therefore, he did not know that He Jin and Zheng Tan were no longer there. When he heard the noise from outside, he was wondering how many people were inside, especially when he heard the dong sound. He was wondering if they were interrogating some unlucky person, but he did not expect it to be the two of them. He Jin was in a good mood when he saw Mao wagging his tail vigorously. He looked behind Mao, but did not see the person he was looking for. Senior is still on the mountain, and there is still a mission. We just have to wait here, and the reinforcements will be here soon. Mao patted He Jin's head. This time, He Jin did not avoid it. Hearing Mao's words, Zheng Tan stretched his body. He was so tense that he could finally relax. Mao pried open the lock and looked at the 3 people who had been locked up by Zheng Tan. The ropes had been tied up professionally, and the wounds on their bodies were obvious. It was impossible for a cat and a dog to cause such damage. "Where are the others?" Mao asked. He Jin looked out of the door and then back at Mao. "They left? Then forget it." Mao checked the surveillance cameras around, turned on the door again, and closed it. The reinforcements that Mao mentioned arrived soon. They were all fully armed, and it was very nerve-wracking to look at. Zheng Tan only saw a portion of them, and the rest were cooperating with the people on the mountain. Since there were people to deal with it, Mao did not stay in one place, and went upstairs and downstairs. When he saw Mao rummaging through the bags of low-quality food, Zheng Tan was sure that he had guessed correctly. These people were indeed manufacturing some illegal drugs on the mountain, and at the same time, producing some low-quality food. They put the drugs in similar bags, and then shipped them out with the food to be sold to buyers. The bags looked almost the same, and the only difference was the barcode. If one did not look closely, one would not be able to tell. In one of the rooms, they found the bugs, and they were locked in big, sturdy boxes. No wonder the red-haired man did not touch the boxes when he was looking at them from above. He obviously knew that the bugs were inside. Zheng Tan thought. Mao said that it was a type of beetle that was brought in from abroad. It was probably mutated by humans. They did not have reproductive abilities, but their appetite was very big. A box of bugs like this could gnaw an adult into a skeleton in less than half a day. However, it was said that this was not the final product. It was just a little toy that the other party gave to this group of people during the transaction. Zheng Tan heard the gunshots coming from the mountain and found a hidden place to lie down. The matter was not over yet, and he did not want to encounter any accidents. On the other hand, He Jin was very excited. It was very familiar with the sound of gunshots, and when it heard the gunshots, it would think of its previous mission. When it was over, it was close to evening. Walnut's arm was injured, and he looked a little tired, but his eyes were bright, and he was in the mood to joke with Mao. Listening to their conversation, Zheng Tan knew that the boss, who had a criminal background, was involved in drugs, and who knew how many murders he had committed, had been arrested. The follow-up investigation and arrest were still in progress. However, Walnut Sr. was already very satisfied to have caught such a big fish. There was only one thing that made him unhappy. They said that the rich second generation who went up the mountain to catch squirrels in the middle of winter was not seen. I think that this is probably someone who hides deeply, but I don't know who he is. If he is an enemy of this gang, then it's fine. After all, this gang's companies on the surface and their secret dealings are an eyesore to some people, Walnut said. On the surface, this group of people's companies had gone bankrupt because of the commercial war, but the majority of their business was still secret dealings. As long as this business existed, they would have a chance to make a comeback. However, more people did not want them to make a comeback. Perhaps, the one who pretended to be a rich second generation belonged to this category? I think that this person is not necessarily an enemy or an ally of this gang. If he was an enemy, the 3 people in the room would have died long ago. There would not be any left alive, Mao said. At the same time, on a certain highway in a luxury car, a person with wine-red hair was wearing a headset and talking to someone. When the group of people on the mountain searched the car, they did not find the other phone hidden in the car. Have you received the information? But you don't have to waste your time now. They are probably already in the hands of the police, and there is basically no possibility of them getting up again. Of course, although you don't have to do anything, you have to honor the money you promised me. This time, in order to find evidence, I was almost disfigured. That can't be helped. Being beaten up is better than being fed to the bugs. As for the lethality of those bugs, think about the commercial spy who was already gnawed into bones. Hee, happy working with you. Next time, remember to visit me if you need anything. After ending the call, after a while, a remittance message appeared on the phone. He glanced at it and smiled. Listening to the blues music in the car, he held the steering wheel with one hand and tapped the fingers of the other hand to the beat of the music. Chapter 227. When Zheng Tan returned home, Jiao Ma scolded Mao. He had suddenly taken the cat away for 2 days and hadn't even called to tell her that he was safe. This made Jiao Ma worried that Mao had taken her cat to a bad place. Mao stood there obediently to be lectured, constantly admitting its mistakes. Seeing Mao's sincere attitude and the fact that there was nothing wrong with her cat, Jiao Ma left after a few words. Walnut really wanted to thank the Jiao family. In his opinion, Zheng Tan and the Jiao family were bound together. If he couldn't repay the cat, he could repay the Jiao family. But now wasn't a good time to tell the truth. Maybe later, Walnut thought. The case was going smoothly and there was hope for a promotion. But what made Walnut unsatisfied was that there was still no news about the rich kid who caught the squirrel. The so-called car turned out to be rented and the ID was fake. In this day and age, the difference between an ID photo and a real person was so big that you wouldn't be able to recognize them even if they were standing right in front of you. He had checked all the rich kids in the area and there was no such person. Those who had seen the fake rich second-generation heir couldn't even remember what he looked like. What left a deeper impression was the embarrassing scene of him crying after being beaten black and blue. Zheng Tan and Black Gold had seen him, but Walnut knew that he couldn't let them tell him anything unless the fake rich kid appeared again. Black Gold would definitely recognize him. Last time, Mao had no choice but to give black rice to the pet center. But this time, when Mao sent black rice over, he emphasized to the people there that peanut candy was not allowed to get close. Otherwise, he would complain to the pet center. Actually, Mao also wanted to move to another place. There were many places in Chuhua City where he could help look after pets, but black rice didn't buy it. It wouldn't go anywhere else at all. Once it went there, it would keep barking. Mao's heart ached when he heard that. After walking around, it was still sent to the pet center. Since this VIP customer had said so, the people at the pet center naturally did as they were told. Therefore, when it went to collect the black rice, it heard the people at the pet center promise not to let any male cats near it. This made Mao quite satisfied. However, after he brought black rice home, black rice ignored him again for 3 days. Every time black rice was sent to the pet center, Mao would always receive the same cold treatment. As for Zheng Tan, he had been doing well recently. Every time he experienced those unpleasant things, he would always sigh with emotion at how peaceful and beautiful life in the courtyard was. The weather was getting colder and colder. At the end of the year was approaching. The students had already gone home after the final exams. Those who were in school were also packing up and would be leaving soon. Therefore, the main roads and many places that were usually lively on campus were now much quieter. To Zheng Tan, this was a good thing. With no one around, he could play more freely. Recently, Zheng Tan would drive his little pushcart out to play every day. In the past, because the Jiao family only had Jiao Ma and 2 children, Zheng Tan couldn't let the 3 of them climb up and down the pushcart every day. The pushcart was much heavier than a normal toy car. Moreover, the Jiao family lived on the 5th floor. It was tiring to move up and down the pushcart. If the Jiao Pa was there, it would be fine, but the women and children were out of the question. Therefore, Zheng Tan usually didn't move the pushcart out except when Fang Xiaokong came to find him to play at Old Lu's place. But now, Zheng Tan could play with the pushcart every day. It adjusted his mood and warmed him up. This matter started last week. Last week, Fang Xiaokong came to Chuhua University to look for Cheng Zhong, the graduate student from the Department of Engineering who had built the pushcart for Zheng Tan. The reason was that after Fang Mengmeng found out that Zheng Tan had a pushcart, she wanted to build one for her family. The third master Fang didn't say anything and asked Cheng Zhong to build another pushcart like Zheng Tan's to please his precious daughter. Therefore, Cheng Zhong was busy building the pushcart. At the same time, he would compare it with Zheng Tan's pushcart, update some parts, and record some parameters. Every day, after Zheng Tan finished playing with the pushcart, he just had to drive to the place where the Jiao Wei and the others played with the pushcart. Now, many of the students who played with the pushcart and airplane models had left. Cheng Zhong had set up a temporary studio there, and 2 local students were learning from Cheng Zhong. Therefore, Zheng Tan didn't have to find someone to move the pushcart back to the Jiao family every day. Cheng Zhong also installed a heating device in the pushcart, and a layer of fluffy cloth was installed in the seat to keep it warm. When Zheng Tan stayed in the pushcart, although his head and most of his torso were still exposed, he didn't feel cold. When Zheng Tan drove the pushcart on the road, some people would laugh a little when they saw it. However, at most, they felt that it was a novelty. Everyone thought that someone had taken out a toy car to play with the cat. Some people even thought that it was a good tool to walk the cat. No one would think that a cat was controlling the pushcart by itself. There were often students who liked to play with machines in school who would build things to run around. Over time, when people saw similar things, they just laughed and didn't think too much about it. The steering wheel was inside, and Zheng Tan's two paws were stepping on it. Therefore, in the eyes of the people outside, the cat was just squatting inside. The person controlling the car was probably someone else, and no one would suspect Zheng Tan at all. There wasn't much wind today. In the winter afternoon, the sun was warm and made Zheng Tan feel a lot better. Until, brother Zheng Tan. His good mood was gone just like that. F***ck, why didn't this little brat take a nap at this time? What was he doing out here? Without looking back, Zheng Tan knew that the children's electric pushcart, which was much bigger than his pushcart, had caught up with him. Zheng Tan didn't want to hear the little brat's babbling, so he sped up. Although Zheng Tan's pushcart looked like a toy, it had all the functions. If he really wanted to speed up, it would be much faster than Jiao Ma's electric pushcart. However, Zheng Tan didn't dare to do that in school. At most, when Fang Xiaokong took Zheng Tan to Lao Lu's place, he and Lu Yao would race down the car. Usually, he would drive slowly to adjust his mood. Even if he couldn't speed up the pushcart to the speed that Zheng Tan wanted, it was enough to shake off the children's four-wheeled car behind him. Brother King, the childish voice was soft and sounded like it was about to cry. It made Zheng Tan want to hit the steering wheel. **ck. This trick every time. With a sigh, Zheng Tan slowed down the pushcart and waited for the children's four-wheeled car to catch up. Zhuokitten's electric pushcart looked like a cat, and the picture on it was of a cat. From the front, the car's headlights looked like a cat's eyes, and there were whiskers around its mouth. Some of the teachers in the school had bought such cars for their children to play with, but most of the children were around 3 years old, unlike Zhuokitten, who started playing with them when he was less than 2 years old. For safety reasons, Xiao Wan, who was in charge of taking care of Zhuokitten, held the remote control in his hand and didn't let Zhuokitten drive the car. Zhuoxiao the cat seemed to know that he was not in control of the car. He was not like other children who would drive excitedly. He would look directly at Xiao Wan and tell him the direction that he wanted to go. Start, turn or stop. For example, just now, when Zhuokitten wanted to catch up to Zheng Tan, he looked directly at Xiao Wan, who was holding the remote control, and pointed at Zheng Tan in front, indicating that he should hurry up and catch up. After Zheng Tan's pushcart slowed down, Xiao Wan quickly walked up. She didn't seem tired or out of breath. She looked at the man and the cat with a smile. The longer she interacted with him, the more she felt that this cat was special. In fact, when she was choosing the car, she showed Zhuokitten many pictures of cars, but the child wasn't satisfied. He pointed at a picture hanging on the wall. There were many pictures hanging on the wall. Most of them were taken when Zhuokitten was 1 year old. One of them was of him and the black cat together. Zhuokitten wanted a pushcart in the shape of a black cat, but Xiaowan felt that black was too heavy for a child. It would have a bad impact on a child's growth, so she changed it to an orange one. As for the deformed graffiti on the car, they were all drawn by Zhuokitten himself. From the outline of the graffiti, it could be seen that it was in the shape of a cat. Xiaowan was very satisfied with this. After all, he was only a child. Many children of Zhuokitten's age might not be able to hold a pen steadily. When Zhuokitten's car came close, the little kid laughed and waved at Zheng Tan. "Brother Black." What the hell was he calling? Zheng Tan pulled his ears and turned his head slightly to look at Zhuokitten, who was sitting in the car wrapped up like a furry ball. He wanted to go over and give him a few slaps. Running out in the middle of winter, he wasn't afraid of catching a cold. Little One followed by his side. Every time little Kitten Zhuo saw the black cat, he would become very talkative. Although his words were not clear and he could not understand what the child was saying most of the time, Little One just let him be since the child was talking happily. Zhuokitten's learning ability was very strong. Xiaowan could see that this child's IQ was higher than other children of the same age. As for how much higher, she couldn't say for sure. Zheng Tan pulled his ears and listened to the little brat babble for nearly half an hour. He couldn't understand what the little brat was trying to say. The child could only say a few words clearly, and Zheng Tan's name was one of them. When the child was excited, his words became vague. However, Zheng Tan could feel that Zhuokitten's language ability was improving. At least compared to last time, Zheng Tan could make out 1 or 2 words in a sentence. When Zhuokitten finally got tired of playing and said he was tired, Xiaowan brought him back to rest. It was windy. It wasn't good to stay outside for too long in this weather. If Zhuokitten hadn't made a fuss about coming out, Xiaowan wouldn't have compromised. After Zhuokitten left, Zheng Tan drove the car to the old tile-roofed house and handed it to Cheng Zhong and the others. After that, he decided to go out for a walk. Before the incident with Senior Walnut, he had planned to go there and didn't go out. The weather was good now, and little Pomelo and the others were also on vacation. There was no need to pick them up on time. Jiaoma had been busy marking test papers and doing statistics at school recently, so she came back a little late. Dinner was usually around 6 o'clock, so Zheng Tan could play more. Coming out of one of the side doors, Zheng Tan remembered that this side door was on the same line as the side door in the east courtyard. When he took the bus, he passed by here. It was also marked on the map. After walking for a while, Zheng Tan saw Tsinghua University's affiliated hospital. Jiaoma had been here when she was hospitalized. Zheng Tan didn't plan to go through the hospital's main entrance. He didn't like the atmosphere in the hospital. In his memory, behind the hospital, there was a big courtyard near the inpatient department. The scenery inside was not bad, and there were often people walking around. Zheng Tan didn't plan to stay here for long. The hospital always made him feel depressed. Every time he came here, he would think of Jiaoma's hospitalization. He just decided to go through here. Jumping on the wall of the courtyard was slightly higher than the wall Zheng Tan saw on Old Street. From here, Zheng Tan's field of vision was slightly wider. There were many evergreen trees in the courtyard. This could also reduce the emotions of the patients when they saw the withered leaves. At this time, there weren't many people walking around outside. Zheng Tan didn't pay much attention to it. He planned to walk along the wall. Chapter 228. Zheng Tan had heard too many of such words, especially those that were filled with strong disgust. Zheng Tan paused and looked in the direction of the voice. 2 people were standing beside a tall cedar tree. One of them was about 40 years old and looked like a noblewoman. The other had a head full of white hair and was wearing a light-colored shawl. Her entire person exuded a sense of tranquility and peace. The one who spoke was the middle-aged woman. She supported the old woman next to her and looked at Zheng Tan with undisguised disgust. Zheng Tan found it strange. He didn't provoke this woman, so why did she speak as if she had a grudge against him? However, the old woman next to the middle-aged woman didn't have any disgust in her eyes. Instead, she looked at him with a kind smile. "What's wrong with a black cat?" The old woman said, obviously disagreeing with the words of the person next to her. However, this old woman didn't seem to be in good health. Her voice wasn't loud and was a little soft. Compared to the old women in the courtyard who sang operas without any pressure, this old woman lacked energy. The middle-aged woman's mouth twitched, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't say it directly. She paused and said, "Mom, let's take a walk over there. This place is good. There's no need to change places." The old woman shook her head and patted the hand of the person next to her. "I know you think a black cat is unlucky." The middle-aged woman wanted to explain, but when she opened her mouth, the old woman raised her hand and stopped her. The old woman knew what she wanted to say. Most of the people in the hospital were patients. Some of them were in the recovery period and came out to walk around. Some, like this old lady, sometimes didn't want to stay in the ward all day during the hospitalization period. After getting the doctor's permission, they would come out to walk around. Waiting for her, there might be a surgery, but it hadn't been decided yet. The old woman also felt that the ward was too stuffy today. After talking with the doctor, she let her daughter-in-law help her out to walk for some fresh air. Originally, a wheelchair was arranged, but the old woman didn't sit. Not far behind them was a nurse. She was probably there to prevent any unexpected incidents. Zheng Tan felt that this old woman was quite charming when she smiled, as if it had a magical effect of calming people's impetuous hearts. Zheng Tan's bad mood when he heard the words targeted at him just now disappeared completely. This old lady must have been a beauty when she was young, Zheng Tan thought. In this era, there were many beautiful people. Unfortunately, even if they were once peerlessly beautiful, they could not withstand the pig-slaughtering knife of time. However, time could only take away one's appearance, but it could not take away one's temperament. Everyone would grow old eventually, and it was not easy to stay elegant all the time. Perhaps she was tired from walking. The old lady looked around and walked to the wooden bench by the side of the road, planning to sit there and rest. After seeing the old lady's actions, the nurse behind her quickly stepped forward and placed a soft cushion on the wooden chair. The old lady smiled and thanked the nurse. The young nurse's impression of the old lady immediately improved. The middle-aged woman looked at Zheng Tan and could not help but feel disdainful. She cursed the black cat on the wall 1,000 times in her heart. It couldn't be helped. In the hospital, many people were more particular, and some things were taboo. For example, when it came to fruit, most people would send apples, and very few people would send pears. 2 days ago, the old lady still wanted to eat pears. She spent a lot of effort to persuade the old lady to change it to other fruits. But now, what should she do when she saw a black cat? Many people felt that the black cat was evil, especially at such a time and place. The middle-aged woman felt that it was inauspicious, especially when the cat looked at people. It made her feel uneasy. She originally wanted to chase the cat away, but seeing the old lady like this, it was impossible to chase it away. She wanted to take the old lady somewhere else, but the old lady was sitting down now. What should she do? Although she did not say anything, Zheng Tan could see the strong disgust and rejection in the middle-aged woman's eyes. This made Zheng Tan, who was about to leave, change his mind. Zheng Tan was sometimes like this, stubborn and rebellious. The more you hate me, the more you want me to leave, but I won't. Thus, Zheng Tan squatted on the high wall and stared at the middle-aged woman, proudly wagging the tip of his tail twice. The middle-aged woman was so angry that her face was twitching, but because the old lady was next to her, she had to suppress her anger. If it were any other time, she would have called someone to beat him up. The old lady looked in the direction of Zheng Tan and smiled. I saw a lot of black cats when I was young. At that time, the old people in our village said that black cats are spiritual creatures that can drive away evil spirits. The middle-aged woman was disdainful of this saying. Drive away evil spirits? She thought that the cat itself was evil. You don't believe me, I remember at that time, our village. The old lady looked in the direction of Zheng Tan, but her eyes seemed to be looking through Zheng Tan to recall the things that happened many years ago. The old lady said some things, but the middle-aged woman only listened to a story. The disgust she felt for the cat on the wall did not decrease much. If she was hospitalized, she would definitely not want to see this pure black cat. She would definitely ask someone to chase it away and beat it until it did not dare to come close. It was probably because of Zheng Tan that the old lady was addicted to reminiscing about the past, and she even said some interesting things in her memory. I didn't know that you were so naughty back then, the young nurse next to her joked. Yes, I was also a crazy girl back then. The old lady did not mind revealing her past at all. She sighed and said, People, when I think back to when I was young, I feel that I have changed a lot. Shortcomings, strengths, old habits, new habits. It's just like the construction of a city. Some places have to be torn down, and some places have to be rebuilt. After a few years, you will find that the city has changed a lot. The young nurse did not know what to say at this time. She did not know the old lady, and she was afraid that she would say something wrong and make the old lady sad. For an old person at this age, a small illness could be fatal. Emotions were very important. The middle-aged woman saw that the old lady's words were not right, so she quickly changed the topic. Unexpectedly, the old lady did not want to change the topic at all. She looked at the black cat on the wall and said to the middle-aged woman, I think this cat is quite spiritual. Spiritual my ass. The middle-aged woman cursed silently. The old lady was excited and waved at Zheng Tan. Hey, black cat on the wall, do you have time to talk to me? What could it know? The middle-aged woman was about to comfort the old lady, but unexpectedly, she caught a glimpse of a black shadow on the wall. When she looked over, she saw that the cat that was originally squatting on the wall had jumped down and was slowly walking towards them. This time, not only the middle-aged woman and the young nurse, but even the old lady was surprised. She was just saying it casually and did not expect the cat to come. Zheng Tan had a good impression of the old lady, so he decided to give her some face. Also, he wanted to make the middle-aged woman angry. Seeing that Zheng Tan was really coming, the old lady was happy. She waved and patted the wooden chair next to her, indicating that Zheng Tan should sit there. The middle-aged woman wanted to say that the cat had a lot of germs, but seeing that the old lady was in a good mood, she did not dare to say anything. Zheng Tan did not hesitate and jumped onto the bench. Although the middle-aged woman was patient, when Zheng Tan came over, she could not help but move to the side like avoiding the plague. She did not want to be too close to the cat. "See, what did I say? This cat is spiritual, right?" The old lady raised her hand and touched Zheng Tan's head. Zheng Tan turned his head to avoid her. The old lady did not care. She felt that cats were more vigilant. It was good enough that they could come over. Therefore, the old lady's happiness did not decrease at all. This time, the young nurse found an opportunity and quickly said, "That's true. This cat can drive away evil spirits." She originally wanted to say that the cat could get rid of diseases, but she changed her mind. Otherwise, she would not be able to bear the consequences if something happened. What could she say? Although the middle-aged woman was very repulsed by the cat on the bench, she had to force a smile and say a few words to make the old lady feel better. Zheng Tan, on the other hand, stood beside the old lady with a smug look on her face. She looked at the middle-aged woman with a provocative look. The middle-aged woman took a deep breath and suppressed the surging anger in her heart. She originally thought that she was overthinking things. How could there be such a gaze in a cat's eye? But the more she looked, the more she felt that it wasn't an illusion caused by her emotions. She immediately clenched her fists. Because she had to take care of the old lady, her long nails had been cut. If not, when she clenched her fists, her nails would have pierced her palms. Zheng Tan saw the middle-aged woman's small movements and was very disdainful. Although this woman looked like a rich madam, she did not dare to dress up too much when taking care of a patient. Her dressing and facial care showed that she used to be a very popular beauty. But compared to the old lady next to her, Zheng Tan felt that this middle-aged woman was an old witch. Maybe this was the difference in temperament? Shaking his head, Zheng Tan squatted down beside the old lady. He could see that the old lady was sick and weak. She was such a kind person. Zheng Tan hoped that she would be able to recover soon so that she could see more of this rapidly changing city. From the look in her eyes when she looked at him, Zheng Tan felt that this old lady still had a lot of people and things that she could not let go of. But time waited for no one. The old lady had to go back to the ward. Zheng Tan was also ready to get up and leave. Before getting up, the old lady raised her hand and was about to touch Zheng Tan's cat head again. Zheng Tan reflexively avoided it. A man's head should not be touched. However, thinking about the old lady in front of him, he suddenly felt a little reluctant. Before she withdrew her hand, Zheng Tan raised his front hand and touched the old lady's palm. "I wish you good health, this unknown old lady." After touching, before the three of them could react, Zheng Tan climbed over the wall and left. The old lady looked at her palm and smiled. Not far from the old lady, the young nurse looked at the old lady standing there and thought that she really did not have it easy. From black hair to silver hair, her beauty had faded, her steps were staggered, and she was plagued by illness, but she still smiled calmly. The old lady pulled her shawl and said softly, "Prepare for the operation." "Mom, are you sure? You should think about it again. You can't do it because of that cat?" The middle-aged woman was very worried. If she did not choose the operation, she could still live for 3 to 5 years. The operation was too risky. If it was successful, the old lady could see the changes in this city for a few more years. But if it was unsuccessful, she would never see this city again. Chapter 229. It was Zheng Tan's third New Year, and there was nothing special about it. Jiao Ma brought the 2 children and the cat back to the Jiao family's house for the New Year. She also went to visit Grandpa Gu for a few days. On New Year's Eve, the Jiaopa called and said that he would be back in the second half of the year if he was fast enough. However, he did not promise anything. No one could be sure when it came to the research project. Zheng Tan's impression of the new year was that there were not many ups and downs. Zheng Tan leaned on the balcony and yawned. He looked into the distance from the balcony on the 5th floor. After school reopened, the school began to rejoice again. It was another year of spring. When the flowers bloomed, some trees began to sprout. This was Zheng Tan's 3rd year here. After getting used to it, he did not have many thoughts. Sometimes, even if he did not want to admit it, he had to compromise with fate. What else could he do? Torture himself for fun? There was no need to be so distressed. Zheng Tan rubbed his chin on the flower pot next to him and rolled around in boredom. He remembered what little Pomelo said when he woke up this morning. Zheng Tan ran into the bedroom and jumped on the makeup table. He looked at the Jiaoma's makeup mirror. It seemed that he had gained some weight. It was easy to gain weight during the new year. Zheng Tan did not go out much this year. He ate and slept all day. With Zheng Tan's huge appetite, it would be strange if he did not gain weight. He had been cooped up at home and did not want to go out. Zheng Tan attributed it to spring fatigue and autumn fatigue. However, it seemed that he should go out more often. Winter was over, and he did not need to gain weight anymore. Zheng Tan did not go out directly from the side door of the eastern courtyard. Instead, he walked around the school. When he passed by a small path, he happened to hear Zheng Jing, the only female graduate student under the Jiaopa, complaining about the inappropriate behavior of some teachers in the school. Just like Xian complained before the new year, the graduate students did not have much confidence in speaking in the school without the support of their bosses. The first was the competition for public resources. Even if it was a public resource, it had to be used on a first-come, first-served basis. There were limited resources and funds. Whoever had the ability would be the first to use them and occupy them. But now, Zheng Tan listens to Zheng Jing's complaints. It seems that there are more things than what Xian said. Otherwise, Zheng Jing would not have said, "The temple is small, but the pond is shallow." Although Zheng Tan did not know much about their school, she knew from eavesdropping on Zheng Jing and Xian's complaints that they were sometimes bullied by other teachers in the school. It was not uncommon for senior brothers and sisters in the school to bully junior brothers and sisters with the tacit approval of their mentors. Competition between students in the same school existed all the time. Sometimes, those who engaged in scientific research might not lose to those who engaged in politics. In this day and age, those who did not care about chores and focused on their studies would either have someone to back them up, or they would be reduced to cannon fodder in fights or ladders for others to climb up the social ladder. As for the rest, the proportion of those who could follow their own path was too small. However, the Jiaopa wasn't the kind of person who would swallow his anger and suffer in silence. Just wait for him to settle the score later. Zheng Tan was very confident in his cat's father. Zheng Tan still planned to go to the affiliated hospital today. He was not familiar with this place yet. When he arrived at the hospital, Zheng Tan couldn't help but think of the old lady who left a good impression on him when he came here last year. He wondered how the old lady was doing now and how she was recovering. Jumping on the wall, Zheng Tan walked along the high wall. Even in winter, he could see many green courtyards. Today, there were many new greenery. It was full of vitality. Today's weather was also good. Some patients who were recovering well but couldn't stay in the ward came out to walk with their family members. Looking at the surrounding scenery, they felt much better. Zheng Tan didn't plan to look carefully. He just glanced at the wall as he walked along. Because of the taboo incident with the middle-aged woman last year, Zheng Tan felt that it was better not to be too ostentatious in the hospital. Although he didn't look carefully and his footsteps were hurried, what surprised Zheng Tan was that he was stopped by someone after a few steps. At first, Zheng Tan didn't think it was him. It wasn't until the person called the black cat on the wall a few times that Zheng Tan looked over. The person who called out to Zheng Tan was a young nurse. She wasn't the one he saw last year. Next to the young nurse, there was an old lady in a wheelchair who was being pushed around by the young nurse. The person in the wheelchair was the old lady Zheng Tan saw last year. When Zheng Tan looked over, the old lady waved at him. Compared to last year, the old lady looked a lot thinner now. However, her complexion was better. When she looked at people, the expression in her eyes made people's moods unconsciously develop. Thinking about it, the old lady saw Xianxia but couldn't shout, so she asked the young nurse who was in charge of pushing the wheelchair to speak. The young nurse looked at Xianxia with a puzzled gaze. She knew that many people in the hospital were afraid of pure black things. Last time, there was a person who wore a black suit when visiting a patient. The patient threw something at him. The patient said that the person had sinister intentions and scolded him for a long time. But now, the old lady was so enthusiastic about a black cat. It was really puzzling. There were patients who came out for a walk around. When they saw the old lady like this, they asked the doubts in their hearts. However, they didn't get close. People who were particular about this were afraid of provoking something bad. Old lady, my surgery went so smoothly thanks to this cat. Regardless of the truth, the old lady did have the intention to whitewash Xianxia. Some people around believed it, and some didn't. He didn't care about what others thought. Xianxia felt that since the old lady wanted to protect him, there was no reason for him to directly embarrass her. Since the old lady beckoned him over, Xianxia jumped off the wall and walked over. The old lady wanted Xianxia to sit in her arms, but Xianxia didn't do it. He walked beside the wheelchair. The young nurse slowly pushed the old lady down the road. Perhaps it was because there was a black cat following them, but the young nurse purposely avoided crowded places to avoid causing trouble for the other patients. After all, not everyone could tolerate a black cat in a place like this. After walking half a circle, the young nurse was ready to push the old lady back. Xianxia looked at the old lady's tired face and knew that the old lady wanted to rest. He decided to walk with her and leave. Hearing that the old lady's surgery went smoothly and her recovery was ideal, Xianxia's heart was relieved. However, this was just a coincidence. She was just a passerby. Xianxia didn't want to get too close to her. After walking a circle, they came to a fork in the road. Xianxia was about to turn and leave when he looked up and saw 3 people standing at the fork. 2 men and a woman. Xianxia saw the woman when he came over last year. She was the middle-aged woman who rejected him. Standing next to the middle-aged woman should be her husband, the old lady's son that the young nurse said. That person looked quite steady. He should be the kind of person who stood at the top and gave out orders on a daily basis. At the moment, the couple was talking to a young man in his 20s. Looking at the couple, the young man should have some status. Otherwise, the couple wouldn't treat him like this. This was the thought of the people around, including the young nurse who pushed the wheelchair, when they saw this scene. Your son came to see you again. The young nurse saw the people standing at the fork and said with a smile. She knew that the old lady had a very capable son. She heard that he was the boss of a big company. He was usually very busy, but when he had time, he would come to the hospital to see the old lady, especially during the days of the old lady's surgery. He was almost always with the old lady. If it weren't for the old lady's insistence, this person would have sent more people to take care of her. Previously, he was prepared to arrange for the operation abroad, but the old lady refused. In general, he was a filial son. The old lady was also very satisfied with this son, and the smile on her face deepened. However, standing next to the wheelchair, Xianxia's heart was in turmoil. He just glanced at the couple and didn't pay attention to them anymore. His focus was on the young man. That young man, how to describe it, was dressed in a suit and leather shoes. His hair was meticulously combed, and he had put in a lot of thought into his clothes. When he spoke to the couple, his smile was appropriate, not humble, not ostentatious. At first glance, people would definitely think that this person must have been taught by a big family with a very good background. Even if he didn't have a big family background, he was a social elite with a high level of knowledge, quality, responsibility, goals, contributions, and achievements. However, this social elite that everyone thought was well-educated and polite, in Xianxia's eyes, was a high-level liar with godlike acting skills. That's right, this person was the fake rich second generation with wine-red hair that Xianxia had seen when he followed Air Mao to track down Senior Walnut. That time, this person's face had been beaten up, so he couldn't see clearly what he looked like. Thinking about the fake ID photo in Senior Walnut's hands and comparing it to this person's appearance now, the difference between the two was too big. Zheng Tan looked carefully a few times. Although there was no evidence to prove that this person was the same red-haired person from last time, Zheng Tan felt that this was the same person. Sometimes, a change in temperament or a change in hairstyle could make a completely different person. However, Zheng Tan now knew that temperament could also be faked. And this person could change without any trace, using his acting skills to perfection. Zheng Tan couldn't help but sigh again. It was a pity that this person didn't go into acting. However, if this person was really a liar, could he have fooled the couple so easily? Judging from the young nurse pushing the wheelchair, Zheng Tan didn't think that the couple would believe people so easily. Just as he was thinking, Zheng Tan noticed a detail. Although the middle-aged woman didn't say much and just stood there listening to her husband talk to the young man in front of her, her eyes intentionally or unintentionally swept over the man's cufflinks. Most people wouldn't pay much attention to cufflinks, but men with a certain social status would pay attention to these small details. A small cufflink could be an obvious sign of a woman's good taste. Some people even said that in this era without aristocrats, cufflinks could make a yuppie man elegant. Zheng Tan used to be a rich second-generation heir, and he had made his way into some circles. He had attended many parties, and before one of the parties, he had heard from a playmate who was helping him pick out a dress about the cufflinks. It was because of this that Zheng Tan knew about some of the things that he usually did not pay attention to. Now, the middle-aged woman's behavior reminded Zheng Tan of these details. Jiao Pa often told Jiao Yuan that details determine success or failure. This high-level liar could be successful because he took care of these details to perfection. Looking at the swindler who was chatting with the couple, Zheng Tan was once again in awe of him. In this day and age, whether it was a street sweeper or a social elite, there were specializations in the field and development of other skills. Who would have thought that this person who was just a fake rich second generation before the new year would suddenly become a social elite? His appearance and temperament told people that he was very cultured and cultured. He was a high-class social elite who had received an excellent education. It was because he understood the other side that the contrast was so great. Zheng Tan squatted there and kept staring at the man. After the three of them finished talking, the social elite came over to greet the old lady. He also seemed to casually ask about the black cat that was squatting next to him. Knowing that the cat was just a coincidence, the man didn't ask any more questions. When he left, the social elite glanced at Zheng Tan again and then walked to a building in the hospital, saying that he was going to get the medical report. Chapter 230. In fact, Zheng Tan had hesitated whether or not he should tell Senior Walnut, but in the end he gave up. Generally speaking, he didn't have any enmity with that high-level swindler. That person's actions on the mountain could actually be considered as helping him. Since it didn't affect his own interests and didn't seem to be a threat to himself and Senior Walnut, Zheng Tan was too lazy to bother. In the following period of time, Zheng Tan didn't see that high-level swindler when he left the affiliated hospital. There were too many people who came to the affiliated hospital for treatment every day. After all, this was a real tertiary grade A hospital. There were so many people who came to see a doctor or were already hospitalized here that Zheng Tan couldn't see them all. Even that old lady, it was rare for him to see her once in 3 times. It could only be said that he was lucky and coincidental to have met her before. As for that high-level swindler, as the days passed, Zheng Tan didn't think about him anymore. Zheng Tan was too lazy to pay too much attention to people and things that had nothing to do with his life. On this day, Zheng Tan once again came to a place he hadn't been to for a long time, the night building. The person who brought Zheng Tan here was Celestine, and the person with Celestine was his wife. It was rare to see Celestine bring his wife to a place like the night building. Although the night building was completely different from the other messy clubs, nightclubs, and bars, Celestine's wife looked like an honest person. She was also the kind of girl who was well-behaved when she was a student. She rarely went out in the middle of the night, and basically never went to a nightclub or bar. Celestine's wife wasn't a particularly beautiful person. Her appearance could only be considered average, but she was very kind, virtuous, and took care of the family. When Celestine chatted with some friends before he got married, he said that marriage was for the sake of the future. Finally, he found such a suitable wife, and Celestine was quite satisfied with this wife. Looking at Celestine's current routine, it was clear that it wasn't as messy as before. He went to bed and woke up early, and it had been a long time since he came to the night building. The reason why he was here today was actually for a performance at the East Palace tonight. Tonight, the band performing at the East Palace was a foreign band. They combined traditional and old-fashioned blues with urban blues and formed their own style. They might not be famous among some young people in their teens or 20s, but in terms of international fame, they were much better than some of the so-called popular bands in China. Of course, there were many people who liked this band in China. Celestine's wife was one of them. It was not that Mrs. Wei liked blues music, but she had read a book written by the lead singer of this band. That was why she liked this band. This was also the main reason why Celestine, who had been upgraded to a good husband and rarely went out at night, brought his wife here. And about coming to the night building, Celestine finally remembered Zheng Tan. He drove his wife to Tsinghua University, picked up Zheng Tan, and went to the night building. Celestine brought his wife here. Zheng Tan certainly didn't want to be a third wheel. Besides, he had his own private room in the night building, so he didn't want to disturb the couple. However, Celestine was afraid that Zheng Tan would be bored alone, so he asked Zheng Tan if he wanted to find some friends to play with. Zheng Tan thought about it. He couldn't find animals now, but he could find people. Therefore, Jin and the others, who were resting at home, got up after receiving the phone call. They had been busy these 2 days. They didn't have a performance in the night building, but they had other things to do. They were busy during the day, so they planned to go to bed early when they came back. They didn't expect to receive a call from Celestine. Jin and the others released their first album last year. The results were good, especially the song, Cat's Fantasy, which had no lyrics but some cat sounds. Many people called it last year's divine song. Perhaps it was too exaggerated to say that the song was popular because the style of this song was too strange, but it didn't make people feel bored. On the contrary, sometimes people felt that it was worth thinking about. A critic also said that there was a cat in everyone's heart. Could be lazy, clever, proud, or lovable. Everyone had a different feeling when they listened to this song. Although Jin and the others made some achievements last year, they were still too far away from those big names. Just like how Jin and the others were still not qualified to perform in the East Palace, there were many bands that performed outside the East Palace that were more famous than Jin and the others. They were not qualified to enter the East Palace, let alone Jin and the others. With Jin and the others' status, it was impossible for them to have a private room in the night building, let alone a private room. Now that someone told them that there was such an opportunity in front of them, they were naturally quite happy. They naturally knew the bands that performed in the East Palace today. Being able to listen to these masters' performances and learn something from them would be very beneficial for their future development. Hey, Jin, was it really Mr. Wei who invited us? The band's drummer, Wang Zhe, quickly put on his clothes and asked. Although the people in the night building called Celestine Brother Ling, Jin and the others now directly called him Mr. Wei when they met Celestine, with some reverence. The others beside him also waited for Jin to explain. The phone call was from Mr. Wei. He only asked if we were going to watch the performance. As for the private room, Jin now calmed down and realized that Celestine did not seem to let them go to his private room. Forget it, we'll talk about it when we're there. It's good enough that we can go to the private room. Let alone a private room, we don't even have the money to go to the East Palace. Be content. Although he did not say it, Jin's intuition told him that it was related to the cat. He knew that the person who sent the invitation was definitely not someone from the night building. Otherwise, they would not have waited until now to say it. Even when their results were released, they did not hear any movement from the other side. As for Celestine, in terms of relationship, Celestine was not as familiar with them as the cat. When Jin and the others arrived at the night building, they happened to meet a band that was performing in the same area as Jin. They were all young people with a strong sense of competition. Whether they performed or not, these two bands were serious about each other. When they met, it was inevitable that they would say a few words to each other. However, now that they were at the entrance of the night building, both sides restrained themselves. Jin and the others were in a hurry, so they could not let Celestine wait there. They stopped Wang Zhe, who was about to continue, and lifted their feet to enter the night building. They were not qualified to enter from the side door, so they could only enter from the front door and be led by the people inside. Because Celestine had already greeted them, the people in the night building were also familiar with Audine and the others. After recognizing them, they directly led them upstairs. This made the band that had not gone far stunned for a long time. Only Audine had been to the private room before. Even so, they were still very nervous. Even Wang Zhe, who was usually talkative, kept his mouth tightly shut, afraid that something would go wrong. The people in front led Audine and the others forward. When they passed by Celestine's room, Audine thought to himself, "Sure enough, it's not Celestine's private room." Just as he thought of this, Audine saw the people in front of him raise their hand and knock on the door of the next room. Click. With a soft sound, the door opened. The people in front of them motioned for Audine and the others to go in. Audine and the others swallowed their saliva and tidied up their clothes, for fear that if they met the big shots later, they would leave a bad impression on them. However, after they stepped into the door, the 5 of them were almost shocked by the layout in front of them. This was too unconventional. It was completely different from what they had imagined. What was the matter with the hanging hairy mouse? What was the soft couch in the shape of a cat's paw trying to express? Also, what were those paintings on the wall? Were they prepared for children? The dignified night building actually had such a place. This was the first feeling the 5 of them had when they came in. When they saw the cat sitting calmly on the sofa, they were all in a bad mood. This cat, to them, seemed to exist to subvert their understanding of the world. Behind them, Wang Zhe poked Audine and whispered, "Captain." After so many years of experience, he always had some skills in reading people's expressions. However, when it came to a cat, he didn't know where to start. Audine paused and had some ideas in his mind. He walked to the sofa where Zheng Tan was and sat on the chair next to the coffee table. Zheng Tan glanced at him and pushed a plate of nuts on the coffee table in front of him to Audine. Audine looked at the various nuts on the plate and began to peel them. He didn't eat the peeled nuts but put them on another small plate in front of Zheng Tan. The 4 people behind Audine were speechless. Did this mean that they were going to serve the cat? At this time, Celestine came in from next door. After coming in, he briefly explained to Audine and the others. The general idea was that he called them over just to let them accompany the cat and listen to the performance. After that, Celestine went back to accompany his wife next door. Now, the performance outside had already begun. Except for Audine, the other 4 people were somewhat restrained and helpless. They didn't speak the same language and were of different species, so they always felt very awkward. However, seeing Audine like this, they couldn't stay idle, so they all came over to help him peel the nuts. Zheng Tan was only familiar with Audine, and he rarely met the other 4 people. However, now it seemed that these people were quite smart. Even in the face of a cat, in the face of such an unexpected situation, they could try to calm down and deal with it as calmly as possible. They didn't have too many tricks. In general, Zheng Tan now had a good impression of these people. He thought that if he came again, he could call them over to help him peel the nuts. This was a mutually beneficial thing. Zheng Tan came here just to relax, and Audine and the others could better listen to some masters of the East Palace. Zheng Tan didn't need to pay for his expenses here. They were all free. In fact, he didn't spend much. He didn't dare to drink now, because he would definitely be scolded when he went back. If he just listened to the performance and ate some snacks, the cost was nothing to the night building. When they peeled half a plate, Zheng Tan raised his paw and pushed the remaining nuts to Audine. Then, he ate a few pistachios and went to the window to look at the performance below. Cats also eat this? Wang Zhe opened his mouth and asked Audine silently. He carefully pointed to the small plate on the coffee table with all kinds of peeled nuts. Audine glanced at him, indicating that Wang Zhe shouldn't talk nonsense. Then, he also went to the window and looked at the performance below. The main purpose of their coming here was to watch the performance. Soon, the 5 people swept away the helplessness and awkwardness just now. Looking at the performance below, the 5 of them also exchanged their experiences and talked about their own differences. Zheng Tan was not interested in music. When he scrolled down, he mainly focused on the good-looking girls, such as the white-collared lady in professional attire, or the innocent-looking female student, or **CK. When Zheng Tan's gaze swept over one place, he froze. He saw an acquaintance. That high-level liar. Chapter 231. Zheng Tan was quite surprised to see this person in the night tower. The cost of living in the East Palace was not a small amount. Was this person really not short of money? These days, swindlers lived a much better life than white-collar workers who worked hard in offices. They drove luxury cars, flirted with high-quality girls, and often lingered in expensive places. Even Zheng Tan could not help but sigh at the difference. The person did not notice Zheng Tan's gaze. Perhaps even if he did, he was used to attracting attention in the venue below. In fact, from the light and angle, it was not easy for the people below to see the situation in the private room above. Even if they could, Zheng Tan did not care. He was not afraid of being seen. Now, compared to the music he could not appreciate, Zheng Tan was more curious about the identity of this swindler. Today, the performance at the East Palace ended around 10:30. Some people would leave, but for others, their nightlife had just begun. They were still active and would be active until 2 or 3 in the morning. Celestine, who had a family, would not stay here for long. He prepared to leave with his wife. Zheng Tan would definitely be with them. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to go back. In the parking lot, when Celestine drove, he did not close the windows at first. After staying in the night tower for so long, he breathed in more air to clear his mind. There were many cars around the night tower, so it would take some time to drive out onto the main road. Zheng Tan stood up and looked outside through the half-open rear window. He looked around and his gaze fell on a car not far in front of him. Zheng Tan did not see the brand of the car, nor could he remember the type of car. However, Zheng Tan was sure that the car was not cheap. It was different from the luxury sports car that Walnut and the others were looking for. This car was more business-oriented and stable. It was more suitable for the identity of the swindler. Zheng Tan did not expect to meet the high-level swindler twice by hitching a ride with Celestine. It was a bit too much to say that enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. After all, there was no hatred. At this moment, the high-level swindler in Zheng Tan's eyes was very gentlemanly, opening the car door for the hot lady. He closed the door and walked over to the driver's seat. Just as he was about to open the door, he paused and looked at the car that was slowly driving by. The neon lights and street lamps outside the night building were all turned on, and the angle of the light was just enough to shine on Zheng Tan's cat head that was peeking out of the half-open car window. With the brightness of the lights outside the night building, anyone who wasn't visually impaired would be able to see the cat's head clearly. Just a moment ago, he was still imagining how he was going to have sex, but the next moment, he couldn't wait to smash the steering wheel. He took a closer look at the back window of the car that was slowly driving past, and he suddenly couldn't calm down. **CK. It was really strange. Zheng Tan couldn't see the man's eyes. The light reflected from the man's glasses covered his eyes. However, Zheng Tan noticed that when the man looked in his direction, there was a momentary stiffness, as if he had seen something impossible. However, the man quickly covered it up, as if that momentary stiffness was just an illusion under the neon lights. Driving out of the night building's parking lot, the car sped up and the windows were closed. When Zheng Tan looked back, he didn't see the man's car. Although he had met the man twice tonight, Zheng Tan didn't think that he would have anything to do with the swindler. He didn't think that the swindler would go so far as to trick the Jiao family. After returning to the villa complex, Zheng Tan's life continued at a normal pace. He did what he was supposed to do, and there were no ripples caused by the swindler. The flowers were blooming in spring, and there were more insects. Just look at the active birds in the surroundings. However, around the villa complex, not only were the birds active, there were also cats. When the sheriff and Huang saw the jumping insects on the ground, they were as excited as Tong seeing its favorite poop. Depang, who was sent out by his grandmother, probably wanted to find a quiet place to sleep without being disturbed, so he climbed up the crabapple tree nearby. Then, there was the scene that Zheng Tan saw of a dragon Li pressing down on a crabapple tree. This crabapple tree wasn't very thick in Zheng Tan's eyes. He heard that there was a small path here a long time ago, and crabapple trees were planted on both sides of the path. However, when the school was built, most of the crabapple trees were dug up, leaving only a few. After so many years, this was the only remaining crabapple tree. Now, the only crabapple tree was being pressed down by the fat man Depang. Zheng Tan saw that the branches looked like they were about to break. Sure enough, cats were a big killer for plants. In places where cats were often active, plants had to be resistant to bites, scratches, and pressure. After watching the sheriff and the others eat a few insects of unknown species in the villa complex, Zheng Tan ran out of the house for a walk. It was such a good time to come out for a walk. Only then would one feel that the day was so complete. After passing by the affiliated hospital, Zheng Tan walked along the flower beds and walls on the side of the street. The area near the hospital was not noisy. Although there was a commercial street here, it was still a little far from here. Moreover, it was not on the same line as the hospital, so he had to turn halfway. Zheng Tan didn't turn, but walked straight along the street. According to the map, he could see a lake in front of him. The lake was not small, and there were some developed properties around it. He had heard from Air Mao that his great-aunt lived in a house near the lake, but he didn't know which lake it was. After all, there were more than 2 or 3 lakes in Chuhua City. Zheng Tan didn't want to visit Air Mao's great-aunt. That old woman was too difficult to please, and he wasn't in the mood to visit her. After walking past a big hotel and some small shops around it, Zheng Tan saw a residential area marked on the map. Zheng Tan jumped onto a big sycamore tree by the side of the road to take a look. Part of the residential area was made up of small villas, while the other part was made up of tall elevators. He had heard that some teachers in Chuhua University had bought houses here. It was close to the university, and the environment was good. It was not noisy. Zheng Tan had once heard from the Jiaopa that he had the intention to buy a house here. One of his colleagues had bought a house here, but because of his job transfer he had planned to sell it. The Jiaopa had gone over to check it out, but he felt that the neighbors there were not good, so he didn't buy it. However, Zheng Tan was glad that the Jiaopa didn't buy it. In comparison, he was actually more inclined to buy a house in the East District. To Zheng Tan, it didn't matter if the place was small or not. What was important was the place to play and playmates. After climbing over the wall on the side, Zheng Tan walked along some small paths inside. The greenery here was really good. No wonder the Jiaopa had taken a liking to this place. He had heard that the Jiaopa had invited an old professor who was in the field of landscape design to come here. A little Pekingese barked in its yard. When it saw Zheng Tan, it barked fiercely. Unfortunately, it couldn't come out. Zheng Tan ignored it and continued to look at the surrounding houses and layout with interest. This residential area had been built for a few years. The trees were lush with leaves. Zheng Tan even saw a few cats playing there. When they saw Zheng Tan, the cats didn't show too much hostility. At most, they were vigilant and curious. It seemed that they were surprised by the sudden appearance of this unfamiliar guy. They didn't show any hostility, and Zheng Tan didn't have the intention to fight for territory. They went their own ways. The residential area near the lake was built with high fences not far from the lake. Outside the fences was a road that could accommodate 2 cars at the same time. On the other side of the road was a green belt, and on the other side was the lake. There were all kinds of warning signs and fences by the lake. Many incidents of people falling into the lake had happened around this area. Coming out of the residential area, Zheng Tan walked along the road near the lake. He jumped onto a tree and looked around to identify the road ahead. Unexpectedly, Zheng Tan really found something that interested him. It was a car, a high-end car, and it looked quite familiar. Zheng Tan wasn't sure if it was the same car that he saw at the night building that day. He jumped down the tree and walked over the fence. The place where the car was parked was still the villa area. In fact, the villas in this area all looked similar. Except for the few that the owners had specially spent a lot of effort to decorate, there wasn't much difference. Zheng Tan looked at the house number of the villa and listened to the movements inside. There were voices in the house. There were 2 people talking. One was the liar in Zheng Tan's eyes, and the other was the old lady that Zheng Tan saw at the hospital. The atmosphere of the 2 people's conversation was quite relaxed. Zheng Tan heard the old lady laugh. It turned out that the old lady lived here. The door was closed, but the window next to it wasn't closed. Zheng Tan listened to the conversation from under the window. The general content seemed to be that because something had happened to a colleague in the company, the senior liar sent the colleague to the hospital for a checkup and then sent her home. That colleague was a beauty, and this scene was coincidentally seen by the old lady who went out for a walk. When she saw that it was an acquaintance, she invited him to the house for a cup of tea. As they chatted, that person talked about his hard work history. Zheng Tan listened and got goosebumps. That person's image of himself was what people called other people's children. He was born poor, had a miserable life, had excellent grades, worked hard, had the courage to work hard, had the ability, entered a big company, was valued by the boss, and finally became a social elite. At the same time, he talked about the ups and downs of the process, which made the old lady look at him more kindly. Zheng Tan spat in his heart. What a load of bullshit. Who was the good-for-nothing that pretended to be a rich second generation on the mountain? That person didn't keep talking about his successful career. After his career, it was time to talk about his love history. He talked about the female colleague that was sent over today. The more Zheng Tan listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. This person was really good at making up stories. If he hadn't seen the other side, Zheng Tan would have been fooled like the old lady. Speaking of which, Zheng Tan was really curious. Did this person also pretend to be shy when making up stories? Could he be so thick-skinned and shy? After thinking about it, Zheng Tan jumped on the windowsill and looked inside. Needless to say, that person's smile was indeed a little shy. The old lady was amused and remembered the past. Back then, the old lady was about to tell the story of her past to encourage the young man in front of her, but she didn't expect that when she slightly tilted her head to look outside the window, she saw a black cat standing on the windowsill. Oh, isn't this that one? The old lady's attention was immediately diverted. She called the housekeeper to see if there was any suitable food to feed the cat. A certain liar who was sitting on the sofa with a cup of tea in his hand couldn't help but twitch his face. Although he didn't show his surging emotions, he had already cursed the entire alpaca community in his heart. Damn. Chapter 232. Under the old lady's invitation, Zheng Tan calmly stepped onto the sofa next to her and lay down. The nanny originally wanted to say something, but seeing that the old lady didn't mind, she didn't say anything. However, she thought to herself that she should go out to buy some flea medicine later. She heard that there were a lot of fleas on cats outside. She didn't know if the fleas would be brought in. Just in case, it was better to be more careful. Zheng Tan noticed that the nanny's attitude towards him wasn't very good, but she didn't have any bad intentions. At most, she was a little annoyed, which could be ignored. The nanny put a small bowl of warm fish soup on the small tea table next to the sofa. Zheng Tan sniffed it but didn't eat it. He wasn't hungry now, and when he was outside he wouldn't eat anything randomly. In fact, the most important thing was that there was half a fish head in the bowl. Zheng Tan didn't like fish heads. The nanny looked at the old lady and asked if she wanted to change the food. The old lady glanced at the cat on the sofa and waved her hand. Leave it there for now. After that, the old lady looked at the man again. I saw this cat when I was in the hospital. I feel that this cat and I are quite fated. I was wondering if it was a cat raised by someone nearby. I didn't expect to see it here. Although the man sitting on the other sofa smiled and listened to the old lady's words, he was roaring in his heart. He didn't feel that he had any fate with this cat. He just felt that he and the cat didn't get along well. Enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. The old lady was still sighing about the coincidence and luck of meeting this cat at the hospital and at home. Now that she said this, he had to sigh even more. The man didn't doubt that this cat was the same one he met before the new year. He still had a good eyesight. After so many years, this was the first time he met such an evil cat. It was a few hours' drive from Chuhua City to the mountainous area. It was possible to meet this cat in the hospital when he came to Chuhua City. It was also possible to meet this cat when he went out at night to get high. Now, it was even possible to meet this cat when he came out to find a target to talk to. What should he say? What fate? The fate of cat poop. The cat just squatted there, not barking or eating. It just looked at you as if it was mocking you. Its eyes seemed to be saying, Lie, why don't you King continue lying? How could this not be depressing? Hey Xiao Gao, where were we just now? The old lady finally turned the topic back. Zheng Tan looked at little Gao. He remembered that the fake ID in Walnut's hands didn't have the surname Gao. Xiao Gao obviously also noticed the way the cat on the sofa 2 steps away was looking at him. Although the atmosphere and mood had changed, Xiao Gao was quite skillful. It was as if he had not experienced the black cat's disdainful look just now. With a perfect smile, he maintained the same expression and tone as before and said, "You were just about to tell me your story." In this day and age, who wasn't thick-skinned and tough enough to deal with all kinds of unexpected situations? Oh yes, here we are. The old lady smoothed out the wrinkles on her clothes, took a deep breath, and seemed to be reminiscing. Xiao Gao gently put down the teacup, as if he was afraid to disturb the old lady's memories. He calmed down and prepared to listen to the old lady's story to confirm if this was the person he was looking for. This was his 3rd suspect and also the most likely one. If he could confirm it, this task could be completed smoothly. Just as the 2 of them began to build up their emotions again, ding 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 ding, the sound of the spoons stirring was heard, pulling the old lady's thoughts back from her memories. She looked up and saw that the black cat was standing up. One of its front paws was supporting itself on the armrest of the sofa, while the other paw was fiddling with the porcelain spoon in the bowl of fish soup on the small tea table next to it. The old lady didn't blame Zheng Tan. Instead, she smiled kindly and raised her hand to pat Zheng Tan's head. Zheng Tan dodged, but he didn't fiddle with the spoon again. He seemed to be very well behaved as he sat on the sofa. When the old lady started to talk about the past with Xiao Gao, Zheng Tan's side started to rumble again. Zheng Tan guessed that this person was probably trying to get some information from the old lady. Zheng Tan had a good impression of this old lady. On the contrary, when he saw this pretentious young man wearing a thick mask in front of him, Zheng Tan couldn't help but want to make things difficult for him. Obviously, Zheng Tan had succeeded in making things difficult for him. Even if Xiao Gao still maintained a nearly perfect expression on his face, he actually wanted to hold his chest and vomit blood. Many times, opportunities didn't come so easily. They couldn't appear abrupt, and they couldn't make people wary. If they missed one, they would have to wait for who knows how long before they could find the next good opportunity. For Xiao Gao, this task, in his opinion, had progressed to this point without any difficulty. It was easy to get information, but he didn't expect that after the appearance of this cat, things wouldn't go so smoothly. F***ck, he was against the black cat, wasn't he? No wonder he always heard people say that encountering a black cat was unlucky. Xiao Gao now had a deep understanding. After encountering the black cat that night, he left the night building, and on the way, his car tire burst once. He was really unlucky. After being interrupted by Zheng Tan several times, the old lady lost interest in continuing to recall, but she didn't have any dissatisfaction with Zheng Tan. She only said to Xiao Gao, "Young man, you have to seize the opportunity. I missed it when I was young. Even if I regret it now, it won't help." Xiao Gao's eyes flashed slightly, but he didn't continue to ask too much. So much time had passed, so he politely said goodbye to the old lady. When he left, he seemed to inadvertently glance at the black cat on the sofa. Zheng Tan stared back at him, but intuition told him that this guy was actually full of tricks, and was probably thinking about how to fight back in the future. After Xiao Gao left, the old lady took Zheng Tan to the backyard to see the flowers she planted. She also asked Zheng Tan to come and accompany her when he had time. The old lady actually didn't expect the cat in front of her to understand anything. She just sometimes wanted to find a suitable person to talk to, especially when she was recalling some things in the past. The old lady sat on the rattan chair in the backyard and sighed. It's been almost 60 years. Zheng Tan didn't quite understand why the old lady sighed, but after thinking about it, he guessed that it had something to do with the purpose of Xiao Gao coming over. Unfortunately, the old lady didn't want to talk about it now. It's okay. When he had the mood to come here for a walk in the future, he could come here to eat and drink. He would probably be able to hear the old lady reminiscing about the past. On the other side, Xiao Gao left the old lady's villa and drove along the lake, preparing to leave the residential area from this road. At this time, his cell phone rang. Xiao Gao stopped the car by the side, looked at the golden turtle on the screen, and answered the phone. Hello, Liu Ba, are you busy now? There's an order that I can't accept. I want to see if you're interested, the person on the other side said. Tell me about it. The Xiao Gao, the old lady was talking about, and the Liu Ba, the person on the other side of the phone said. His tone was not as humble as when he was talking to the old lady just now. At this moment he sounded more casual, as if there were not many things that he cared about. After hearing a few words from the person on the other side of the phone, Liu Ba interrupted, The money is too little, and it's too boring. I won't accept it. Well, I also guessed that you would reject it. I'll find someone else, the golden turtle said. In fact, when he decided to make the call, he thought that Liu Ba probably wouldn't be interested in this order. The reward for this order was a big order for others, but for Liu Ba, it was not even comparable to the small orders he did 5 years ago. Liu Ba was a well-known person in the circle of private detectives. It was said that when he was still a child, he began to help people catch mistresses, find evidence, and make money. Now, he could be said to be very experienced and had a strong understanding. The success rate of taking orders was quite high, and he kept his mouth shut. Similarly, the reward was also high. Even if the reward was sometimes ridiculously high, there was still an endless stream of people looking for him. In China, there were actually laws and regulations that explicitly prohibited the existence of private detectives. Therefore, until now, this industry could not be openly registered. However, in the social reality, there was a need for private detectives to develop, and it was easy for them to take advantage of loopholes. These days, there were more and more people who relied on this industry to make a living. However, every industry was divided into 3, 6, and 9 levels. In this special circle, Liu Ba was a legendary person. There were too many legends and rumors about him, but it was limited to this small circle, and outsiders did not know much about him. From the beginning of small order to now only taking on some big orders, Liu Ba could be said to be standing at the top of the pyramid in this circle. As for Golden Turtle, it was also a code name, but in terms of fame, it was far less famous than Liu Ba. Golden Turtle was now doing nothing in a marriage consulting firm, and he secretly took on some jobs such as investigating mistresses and obtaining divorce evidence. These jobs were easy to do, and he could earn money quickly. Generally, he would not cause any big trouble. Sometimes, when he met some rich people, he would also make a lot of money. Of course, Golden Turtle knew that what they were doing now was just the leftovers of Liu Ba. Speaking of which, Liu Ba could be considered Golden Turtle as half-master, but in terms of age, Golden Turtle was actually 10 years older than Liu Ba. What's wrong? Are you in trouble? Could it be that some ignorant person offended you again? Golden Turtle could tell from the other party's words that this person was not in a good mood. Liu Ba sneered, You speak as if I'm a scourge. Let me think. The last person who offended you suddenly fainted when he was having sex with his wife. The guy who offended you suddenly coughed up blood during an interview, causing the public to speculate about him. The guy who offended you suddenly coughed up blood during an interview, causing the public to speculate about him. The guy who offended you before that suddenly broke his arm when he was dancing. I don't know if he's out of the hospital now. Sigh, this is only what I know. I believe and deeply believe that these people are only a small part of you. There are still a lot of people I don't know about. So, I'm curious. Which unlucky person offended you this time? Liu Ba chewed gum and blew a bubble. When the bubble burst, she slowly said, A cat. What? I said, the one who caused me trouble this time was a cat. Chapter 233. Although the man and the cat hated each other, Liu Ba usually wouldn't care about anything else before she completed the task at hand. Even if she had a personal grudge against someone or didn't like them, she wouldn't immediately seek revenge. The task at hand was more important. Therefore, Zheng Tan's life was still peaceful for a period of time. Sometimes, he would wander around the residential area by the lake. If he went there in the afternoon, he could have afternoon tea and temporarily fill his stomach. What Zheng Tan wanted to do was listen to the old lady's complaints. The old lady's son would often visit her. Even if he could not make it, he would call to ask about her. The family hired a nanny to take care of the old lady. For the old lady, other than going out for a walk, eating, drinking, and sleeping at home, she was very bored. She could not go on long trips because her body had not fully recovered. Therefore, Zheng Tan became a good listener. From the old lady's words, Zheng Tan knew that Xiao Gao had come twice, but Zheng Tan did not meet him. When Zheng Tan heard the old lady say that she had a pleasant conversation with Xiao Gao, she knew that the old lady must have been tricked into revealing something. Usually, when they had a pleasant conversation, they would not be too vigilant or defensive. Thinking about the thick-skinned Xiao Gao with his superb acting skills, and then looking at the old lady, it was easy to imagine what kind of pleasant conversation would be like without Zheng Tan's interference. Xiao Gao was probably overjoyed. However, Xiao Gao did not appear again in recent days. Without Xiao Gao to chat with the old lady, Zheng Tan would occasionally hear the old lady's sighs when he came over, as well as the things that she had hidden deep in her memory because of Xiao Gao. The old lady said that when she was young, she had a relationship and almost had a positive outcome. Unfortunately, due to some reasons, they separated. Although they still communicated through letters for a few years, another accident happened. Since then, the old lady moved to Chuhua City, and there was no news of the other party. Zheng Tan felt that the old lady must be quite lonely now. Although her son had always been concerned about her, because he was too busy with work, the old lady didn't let him come over often. She also asked her daughter-in-law to take care of him more. She only needed to hire a nanny. As for her grandson, he had been sent to study abroad and was rarely seen all year round. Occasionally, he would make an overseas call. Zheng Tan had heard from the old men and women in the courtyard that people nowadays like to send their parents to the old folks' home to save time. However, these old men and women would rather die of old age than go to the old folks' home. Zheng Tan didn't know what a nursing home was like, but he often heard from the people in the compound that many elderly people hated that place. It was not as good as the news said. Some old people could only sit in front of the window every day, silently looking out. Perhaps they hoped that their relatives would visit them often, but most of the time, they were disappointed. There were also some old people whose memory deteriorated as they grew older. After staying in the nursing home for a long time, they didn't even recognize their relatives. If they stayed longer, they might forget their biological children. For example, the old lady's family. Her son was a well-known entrepreneur in Chuhua City and was filial enough. Although he couldn't come over often, he couldn't wait to hire 8 or 10 nannies for the old lady. In front of her son and daughter-in-law, the old lady would definitely be good, but in her heart, she was actually quite lonely. After all, nannies were not family. Little black cat, do you think I should get a pet like a cat or a dog? But at my age, I don't know how long I have left to live. What if I can't take care of them when the time comes? The old lady looked at Zheng Tan and said. Zheng Tan avoided the old lady's hand that reached out to touch the cat's head. He thought to himself, how am I small? In fact, Zheng Tan had seen many people in the same situation as this old lady. In the courtyard, there were many old people whose spouses had passed away early, and their children were not by their side. For example, Depang's old lady. However, although Depang's old lady lived in a smaller place than here, and the living conditions were not as good as here, the old lady lived quite comfortably. At home, she had Depang to accompany her, and outside, there were many old men and women in the courtyard to chat, sing and joke. Compared to the old lady in front of him, she was much better. It was no wonder that Depang's old lady was only willing to stay in the courtyard and not agree to her son moving out. Today, Zheng Tan took a stroll to the residential area again. When he got in through the iron fence and was about to visit the old lady and listen to her nagging, he found that the house was very lively today. There were a few cars parked outside the house, and they were all high-end cars worth millions. Looking at the license plates, 2 of them were not local, but Nanjing license plates. There were a few people sitting in the house. Zheng Tan only knew the old lady, her son, and her daughter-in-law. He did not know the others. The old lady's daughter-in-law, the middle-aged woman who had always found Zheng Tan an eyesore, was smiling brightly at this moment. Her entire being exuded a rare sense of closeness. The two middle-aged men also had smiles on their faces. They were talking, but their voices were not loud and they were not noisy. But where was the old lady? Zheng Tan poked his head out of the door to look inside. The old lady's son saw this and asked Zheng Tan to go in. The middle-aged woman's eyes flashed with displeasure. She felt that it was not good to let such a black cat in when there were important guests, but she did not want to disrespect her husband. Zheng Tan thought about it and walked in under everyone's gaze. He looked around but did not see the old lady. "Is this your cat?" the unfamiliar middle-aged man asked. "No, I don't know which family it is from, but my mother said that she and this cat are fated. When we were in the hospital..." The old lady's son briefly explained the matter, which surprised the two people. Although it doesn't look like a famous cat, it doesn't look like a stray cat either. It is so strong and it is not afraid of people. It looks like it is quite intelligent. The stranger laughed. Zheng Tan listened to the two people and was not in a hurry to find the old lady. He saw that there was a closed room on the first floor. That was where the old lady usually took her lunch break. She was probably in there now. From these people's conversation, Zheng Tan also got a piece of information. Other than the old lady, there was a little old man in the room. Zheng Tan's gossipy heart was suddenly ignited. 2 days ago, he was still listening to the old lady sigh about the past, and now there was an old man. This was the rhythm of the old lady finding a partner. However, the more he listened to these people's conversation, the more Zheng Tan felt that something was wrong. It turned out that this old man was the one that the old lady had been sighing about some time ago. He heard that these two old people were engaged when they were young, but then they went their separate ways. It had been almost 60 years since they separated. According to the conversation in the living room, these two old people, who were still single, wanted to get back together again. In fact, what surprised Zheng Tan the most was not that these two old people had gotten back together after 60 years, but what the unfamiliar middle-aged man said when he talked about Xiao Gao. The middle-aged man said that Xiao Gao was a department manager in his company. Some time ago, he was in contact with the old lady's son. Now, he was transferred to another place, so he was no longer in charge of some business in Chuhua City. Soon, there would be new people coming to contact them. Hearing the other party say this, the old lady's son did not ask any more questions. He even praised Xiao Gao as a very good and capable young man. Zheng Tan carefully observed the unfamiliar middle-aged man. The other party did not have any intention to talk about Xiao Gao. After a while, he chuckled and left. Zheng Tan thought about some of the things that had happened before. After listening to the conversation, he guessed that the unfamiliar middle-aged man wanted to find someone because of his father, so he contacted Xiao Gao. As for how Xiao Gao made a deal with the other party, how he got the title of department manager, and how he found out, Zheng Tan did not know. He did not need to find out. He also did not believe that the two old people getting back together, that the unfamiliar middle-aged man said was a coincidence. He only needed to look at the results now. In any case, whether or not the two old people getting back together was planned by the other party, now that the two old people had gotten back together, it was a good thing for both old people. The business cooperation between these two successful people would probably take a step forward. No matter how you looked at it, it was a good thing. Zheng Tan did not stay for long and left. He guessed that the two old people who had reunited after almost 60 years would definitely have a lot to talk about. To Zheng Tan, the old lady's family was just a passerby in his life. He did not need to spend too much time and energy on them, even if they were rich and had extraordinary identities. What really mattered was the Jiao family. At night, the 3 Jiao family members and a cat were sitting on the sofa watching a martial arts drama on TV. Zheng Tan was sleepy and kept yawning. Suddenly, he heard little Pomelo beside him say, "There's something wrong with the sound in the drama." Zheng Tan looked at the scene on TV and pricked up his ears to listen. The scene on TV was of the main character in a deep mountain. The background sound was the sound of birds chirping. There were also a few scenes that were dedicated to the birds. Zheng Tan looked at it carefully a few times and did not feel that there was anything wrong with the sound of the birds. Jiao Yuan thought for a while and said, "You are saying that the bird in the drama should be a big cuckoo, But the TV is playing the sound of 4 cuckoo? Little Pomelo nodded. Hey, you can even see that. You are so observant. I didn't notice it just now. Jiao Yuan patted his thigh excitedly and ran to the master bedroom. He pulled out a book from his father's bookshelf and flipped through it. Then, he started to discuss with little Pomelo about the differences between the different species of cuckoos in the rhododendron genus and which species was the cuckoo bird. Jiaoma did not know much about this, but she did not object to the children's behavior. Sometimes, it was good to be serious about something. It was good to watch TV and find bugs occasionally. At least, they could learn more from it. As for Zheng Tan, he had seen this kind of bird in school and heard it call out. It was the kind that sang 4 times, which was what little Pomelo said. Zheng Tan was thinking about the cuckoo birds that always jumped around the courtyard tomorrow when he heard Jiao Yuan read, "The cuckoo bird and the swallow are both symbols of male virginity. In ancient times, the villagers sacrificed them during the spring festival to pray for fertility." Before Jiao Yuan could finish reading, Jiao Ma slapped the book out of Jiao Yuan's hand and put it on the highest shelf. Watch TV. If you don't want to watch it, take a shower and go to bed. Hearing Jiao Ma's words, Jiao Yuan pursed his lips and went to sit in the living room. Little Pomelo did not say much. She did not really understand what Jiao Yuan was reading, but seeing Jiao Ma's helpless face, she did not ask Jiao Yuan. Zheng Tan tugged at her ears. It was not easy for a child to be so serious. The next day, Zheng Tan didn't go to the residential area by the lake today. She didn't want to disturb the old lady's reunion, so she started to wander around looking for the cuckoos that the 2 children had mentioned last night. She didn't expect to see those birds that she usually saw today, but she couldn't find a single one today. Zheng Tan wanted to change his path and continue his search. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks and looked diagonally ahead. There was a person standing about 10 meters away. Yesterday, he heard that this person was transferred to another place. Today, he saw him here. Chapter 234. At this moment, Xiao Gao was looking at Zheng Tan and walking towards him. As soon as Zheng Tan saw the malicious light in this guy's eyes, he knew that he was going to take revenge. It must be because of what he did to him a few days ago. However, Zheng Tan didn't immediately run away. He wanted to see what this person was going to do. He didn't feel that it was too dangerous, but he was curious about how this person was going to take revenge. As Xiao Gao walked toward Zheng Tan, his hand reached out to the sports bag he was carrying. The bag was bulging and stuffed with things. Moreover, looking at the bag's tight strap, it was probably quite heavy. He didn't know what it was. What was in it? Zheng Tan stared at the other party. Xiao Gao didn't seem to have any intention of taking things out of the bag immediately. He was probably waiting for the best opportunity. Looking at the person getting closer and closer, Zheng Tan retracted his foot and assumed a posture ready to slip away at any time. As long as he felt something was wrong, he would run. When Xiao Gao suddenly took out the things in the bag, Zheng Tan turned around and ran to the side. The place he chose was mainly a small forest with more trees. While running, Zheng Tan kept cursing Xiao Gao in his heart. F***ck, this guy actually bought a squirt gun. Wasn't this thing for children to play with? Yes, Xiao Gao was holding a squirt gun that looked like a toy. Unlike other toys, he had modified this squirt gun. The distance and accuracy of the squirt gun were much higher than those of ordinary toy guns. Zheng Tan heard the sound of water hitting the leaves of a nearby plant. He quickly changed his direction, but he was still shot a few times. The water this person sprayed had a lemon-like smell. Zheng Tan didn't think too much about this smell. He just didn't know what the other party meant by spraying water with a lemon-like smell. If it was just ordinary lemonade, he wouldn't be afraid at all. This little bit of attack power was nothing to Zheng Tan. Anyway, he just needed to go back and take a shower. The people behind him saw the cat running further and further away, but they did not give up. Zheng Tan heard the footsteps behind him. There weren't many people walking around. Even if someone saw this scene, they might not know what was going on. They wouldn't stand up and meddle in other people's business before figuring out what was going on. However, Zheng Tan wasn't in a hurry. After all, this was Tsinghua University. This was Zheng Tan's territory. He had been here for nearly 3 years, so he was naturally very familiar with this place. He even knew what time, who, where, and what they were doing. From the moment Zheng Tan bumped into Xiao Gao and noticed this person's malicious gaze, he already had an escape route in mind. Xiao Gao slowed down after chasing him for a while. He opened the cloth bag, and there was a mineral water bottle inside. It was filled with water that he had specially prepared. There was no more water in the water gun. Xiao Gao quickly opened the bottle cap, filled the water gun with water, and continued to chase. He knew which direction the cat ran in, and even if he lost it now, he could meet it again when he blocked the cat's home. Xiao Gao passed through a small grassland, turned a corner, and saw the black cat again. But what made the corner of Xiao Gao's eyes twitch was that there was not only a black cat there, but also an adult bulldog. Although the bulldog looked very funny, and there was a black patch where its eyes were, as if it had been beaten by someone, Xiao Gao could not bring himself to laugh. At this moment, the bulldog was staring at him, its crooked triangular eyes flashing with excitement and fierceness. This cat was cunning, but the scene in front of him somewhat subverted Xiao Gao's impression of cats and dogs being at odds. Generally speaking, if cats and dogs got along well, the temperament of one side, especially the temperament of the dog, should be more gentle. However, this cat and this bulldog were not gentle at all. Why did it seem like they were on the same side? Of course, Xiao Gao could tell the difference between a dog that bit and a dog that didn't. The bulldog in front of him would definitely bite fiercely. Zheng Tan stood behind Niu Zhuangzhuang and let Niu Zhuangzhuang, who was several times bigger than him, stand in front of him to block the gun. He looked at Xiao Gao proudly with his tail hooked. Niu Zhuangzhuang's owner would come here every day at this time when he had nothing to do. This was the back door area of the Faculty Activity Center. It was said that some time ago, a piece of equipment was stolen in broad daylight, so Niu Zhuangzhuang was brought here by its owner to prevent theft. They were not at the main entrance, but at the back door area where there were few people. Anyway, there were people guarding the main entrance, and there were many shady places at the back door. There was a large grassland, which was enough for Niu Zhuangzhuang to dig a hole for fun. Although Xiao Gao saw that the bull terrier was chained, he didn't want to provoke the dog. Even if the dog couldn't bite him, it would definitely attract a lot of people if it barked. Besides, he always felt that the dog chain wasn't very reliable. "You come out," Xiao Gao whispered behind the dog. Zheng Tan stood behind Niu Zhuangzhuang and raised his chin at Xiao Gao. "I won't go out, what can you do to me?" Xiao Gao stood there and waited for a while until the phone in his pocket rang. He glanced at the cat, turned around, and left in another direction. He picked up the phone and began to talk. Seeing that Xiao Gao was far away, Zheng Tan pushed Niu Zhuangzhuang, who was wagging its tail and rubbing against him, to the side. He stood up and patted its head, thinking about when he would drag some bones to reward this guy. Looking in the direction Xiao Gao left, Zheng Tan lifted his feet and walked in that direction. He didn't walk far before he heard Xiao Gao answering the phone. That person was sitting in the woods next to the plastic basketball court, facing the basketball court. Usually, Zheng Tan would hang around here. There was a sports field not far from the basketball court. He often sat in the woods behind the stands, thinking about his cat life. Xiao Gao looked back and didn't pay attention to Zheng Tan anymore, but continued to talk on the phone. "What are you doing? Are you free now?" Golden Tortoise asked. "Nothing, I'm taking revenge on the cat. By the way, didn't you say last time that cats hate the smell of lemons? It didn't work. My cat really hated lemons. After I wiped the sofa with lemons, my cat never scratched it again. Every time it saw me take a lemon, it would avoid it. But since you said lemons don't work, you can try the essential balm next time. My neighbor also has a cat, and his cat hates essential balm. If I have that much time, I might as well take on a big job." Golden Tortoise left. "Actually, I don't understand. Why are you arguing with a cat? It's just a cat." Because they had a good relationship, Golden Tortoise often spoke casually. "Okay, let's not talk about this. Tell me why you're calling." "Okay, there's a big job that I can't take on. I'm just helping someone to contact you. They've heard of your name, Lu Ba, and they want you to take over. The price is negotiable." After saying that, he hung up the phone. Xiao Gao, who was Lu Ba by Golden Tortoise, put the phone back into his pocket and sneered. He wasn't laughing at others, he was laughing at himself. There was no need for that. Time was money. If he had the time, he might as well earn money or sleep with a girl. Why would he come here to spray a cat with a squirt gun? He felt childish just thinking about it. He felt that his IQ was lowered when he met a cat. But Lu Ba looked at the black cat hiding behind a tree and looking at him. He felt helpless. This cat was different from ordinary cats. He had seen all kinds of people and pets in the outside world, but there were very few like this black cat. To put it nicely, it was spiritual. To put it bluntly, it was evil. Whether it was a human or a spiritual animal, it wasn't easy for them to come to this world. Generally, unless it was a matter of life and death, Lu Ba wouldn't kill someone directly. He liked to do all kinds of interesting jobs to make money, but he always had a limit. He knew that if he exceeded this limit, he might not be able to live as leisurely as he wanted. Forget it. The squirt gun had been sprayed and the cat had been shot a few times. Just take it as revenge. There was no need to be so calculative with a cat. He lit a cigarette, but didn't take a few puffs. He held it between his fingers and looked at the basketball court in silence. Zheng Tan couldn't see his expression at this moment, but he felt that this person suddenly became deep and had a sense of vicissitudes. Was he pretending again? When the cigarette in his hand was almost burnt out, Xiao Gao flicked the cigarette butt into the trash can a few meters away. He stood up, stretched his arms, and took a deep breath. He looked at the sweaty young students on the basketball court and sighed, "My youth?" He paused and thought of something. He changed his tune and sang, "Birds Don't Come Back." As soon as he finished singing, Zheng Tan saw a blue shadow fly across the sky and stop on a tall sycamore tree branch beside the basketball court. Lu Ba obviously saw it too. He raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect that someone would raise such a rare animal in this place. Moreover, he was confident enough to let the bird run out on its own. Even if there was a positioning ring, it wouldn't be safe, right? Unless the other party was confident. Lu Ba, who was about to leave, sat down again and looked at the bird on the tree with interest. There were many people on the basketball court. Obviously, there was a competition. It wasn't a formal competition, but a friendly competition between different schools and classes. What was interesting was that the two teams in the competition were the School of Liberal Arts, which had more females than males, and the School of Computer Science, which had more males than females. One could see the difference just by looking at the cheerleaders on both sides. Looking at the pretentious guys on one side and the pretentious girls on the other side, as well as the active players on the basketball court, this competition was very meaningful. In a friendly competition, friendship really came first. The score wasn't too big. The School of Computer Science was in the lead at around 7 or 8 points. When the School of Computer Science grabbed a rebound and was about to attack, the cheerleaders on the School of Computer Science were excited. One of them shouted, "Boys of the School of Computer Science." Originally, the people on the School of Computer Science would shout in unison, "Crush the School of Liberal Arts." But before they could say anything, a voice suddenly came from above. "Come out to receive your guests." Lu Ba, who had just opened a new bottle of mineral water because he was thirsty, spat out the water in his mouth. On the other side of the basketball court, the School of Computer Science's power forward, who was about to make a cool hook shot, stumbled. His hand slipped, and the ball directly hit the head of a teacher from the School of Engineering who had come over as a guest referee. Chapter 235. After howling for a while, the bird probably knew that its words were displeasing. Before the people at the basketball court could kick up a fuss, the bird hurriedly flew away again. Zheng Tan followed the bird's flight path and saw a family car parked on a road not far from here. Zheng Tan recognized the car. It belonged to General's owner. No wonder the bird flew here. Its owner probably came here to look for someone and took it out for a walk. During this period of time, the bird was more restricted. It used to be let out to play for 2 days a week, but now it rarely came out once a week. The reason was that the bird bullied the magpies in the school. It almost caused public outrage among magpie fans. There were a few times when it quarreled with people. The ugly magpie that General called a magpie was a symbol of good luck in the eyes of others. Moreover, magpies were not considered ugly. They were considered good-looking among the birds in the school. In order to not attract more hatred, General's owner directly put it in confinement. In fact, before it bullied the magpies, it had a history. Compared to magpies, General hated cuckoos more. It always called cuckoos parasites because cuckoos laid their eggs in other birds' nests and removed the original eggs from the nest. Once, General happened to catch a cuckoo that was committing a crime when it went out to play. Thus, it began to chase it away. During this period of time, no cuckoos were seen in the courtyard. This was General's contribution. After the magpie incident, some people finally couldn't help but form a group to complain. However, when General was locked up, the other birds in the surrounding area felt good. The ones who suffered were the few families who lived in the surrounding area. For people like Xianxia who had good ears, it was difficult to ignore the bird's voice. Every day, General faced the barbed wire on the balcony and lowered its head to sing, "The moon bends over the 9 provinces." Its claws scratched the barbed wire rhythmically. Can you imagine the feeling of wanting to shout F***y every morning when you go out to face the morning sun, ready to start a day of study, work, and life? Or to stretch your paws and prepare to take a stroll when you hear those sad songs like, "Hey, hey, hey, so unfair, when will it disappear, the hatred in my heart," in a trembling tone? Can you imagine the feeling of wanting to shout F***ck in your heart when you go out to face the morning sun every morning, ready to start a day of study, work, and life? Or to move your paws and prepare to take a stroll when you hear those sad songs like, "Hey, hey, so unfair, when will it disappear, the hatred in my heart?" Even some of the more sensitive people might think of some unfair treatment at work, and their mood for the day would probably plummet. Now, this fellow had finally come out and started to take revenge on society. Seeing what it had shouted just now, the people from the Academy of Economics and Technology would probably be used as a joke for a long time, especially during the competition. Even with his eyes closed, Zheng Tan could imagine the moment the opposing team shouted, "Come out and receive the guests," during the game, and the scene of all the players of the Academy of Economics and Economics slipping under their feet. Looking at the bird that flew towards the car parked by the roadside, Lu Ba turned around and looked at the black cat that was squatting behind a tree. "You know that bird, right? Are you good friends?" Lu Ba felt that intelligent animals must have a lot of communication with each other. Judging from the way the cat interacted with the bulldog, it probably had a good relationship with the bird. Zheng Tan's eyes were filled with disdain when he heard this. Was he on good terms with the bird that sought revenge on society? Lu Ba didn't ask about General anymore. He didn't want to kidnap a rare parrot, and he would never do such a thing. Staring at the black cat not far away for a while, Lu Ba smiled. "How did your father teach you?" Parrots had relatively long lifespans, and the longer they lived with humans, the more skills they learned. Therefore, in terms of quantity, there were relatively more intelligent parrots. However, cats were different. They didn't have long lifespans, and they were eccentric and difficult to tame. Although there were many of them, the proportion of cats that could be considered intelligent was definitely not high, and a cat like the one in front of him was even rarer. Therefore, Lu Ba was curious. Zheng Tan looked at him. Since he had already found this place, he should have some understanding of him. The father that Lu Ba mentioned was probably the Jiaopa. Unfortunately, the development of this behavior basically had nothing to do with the Jiaopa. Lu Ba didn't expect to get an answer from a cat, so he just sighed with emotion. After stretching, Lu Ba took out a business card from his pocket. It was a very simple business card with simple information printed on the white paper. Other than that, there weren't any fancy decorations, and it looked very cheap. Lu Ba put the business card where he was sitting and looked at the black cat not far away. Marriage, divorce, mistresses looking for people to beat people up, making fake certificates and false accounts, business espionage, private consulting, and so on. Other than murder, arson, and some other things that are beyond my ability, everything is negotiable as long as you can afford it. My credibility is guaranteed, and I will keep the privacy of my clients absolutely confidential. Of course, we only accept high-class orders. Don't bother me with small orders. It's a waste of time. After saying that, Lu Ba put down the business card, turned around, and left. He didn't expect the cat to understand much of what he said. He said all this and put the business card here purely on a whim. There were all kinds of business cards and flyers thrown into the trash can on campus. In many people's eyes, such an inconspicuous business card would be thrown away, so Lu Ba didn't have much hope that this business card would be used. After making sure that Lu Ba had left, Zheng Tan walked over and looked at the business card that was put there. From a professional point of view, this business card was really unqualified. If the teachers with obsessive-compulsive disorder saw it, they would definitely criticize it. There wasn't much introduction on the business card. There were only two things. One was the number 68 in the middle, which was probably a code name. The second was the email address below the number. Other than that, there was no other information. Just by looking at this business card, Zheng Tan couldn't imagine what the person had said before he left to introduce his business. After staring at the business card for a while, Zheng Tan hesitated for a while. Then he stretched his neck and sniffed it. He didn't smell anything strange, and the business card wasn't dirty. After thinking for a while, Zheng Tan opened his mouth and bit the corner of the business card, then ran home. After returning home, Zheng Tan put the business card in the hidden drawer of his cat tree. That drawer was specially used for storing business cards. Zheng Tan didn't know if he would need this business card in the future, but it wouldn't take much effort to keep it, so he just put it there for now. After Lu Ba left, Zheng Tan didn't see him in the next few days when he wandered around the campus. When he was free, Zheng Tan would go to the affiliated hospital and visit the old lady in the residential area by the lake. Now the old lady was living a good life. With someone accompanying her, she wasn't lonely, and she was smiling a lot more. The old man who was said to be the old lady's lover more than 50 years ago didn't seem like an evil person, but Zheng Tan felt that this person wasn't a harmless and kind person either. Since he was able to build such a big business, he definitely wasn't a simple-minded person. However, this person was really nice to the old lady, and that was enough. Perhaps because he loved the old lady, the old man didn't care about other people, but he was nice to Zheng Tan. After all, the old lady's attitude was there. Today, when he saw Zheng Tan, the old man came out with food with a smile. When Zheng Tan listened to their conversation, he knew that the old man wanted to take the old lady to the south. It was warm there, and there were many connections and connections. The medical treatment there was not inferior to here. If there was anything wrong with the old lady, it would be more convenient for her to receive treatment, and they could also hold a wedding or something. However, the old lady didn't agree. When Zheng Tan went home after wandering around outside, he found that Xiaoguo had come. Today was Saturday. Although it wasn't a working day, Xiaoguo should be busy. Zhang Zian didn't expect him to have time to come here. Looking at the situation in the living room, Xiaoguo and Jiaoma had been chatting for a while, but Zhang Zian didn't know what they were talking about. Jiaoma frowned. After lying on the sofa and listening for a while, Zheng Tan found out that the Green Wings Association had been invited to participate in an event. It was said that there were several similar organizations at home and abroad participating in this event. As a newly established association, the Green Wings Association needed such an opportunity to expand its influence and gain the recognition of more similar and larger organizations. It was no wonder that Xiaoguo valued it so much. If this was successful, there was no doubt that the benefits would be great. As the ace of the obvious pet center, Zheng Tan would definitely be the first to be listed by Xiaoguo. This event didn't require them to bring many expensive varieties. Of course, they had to do a good job of keeping up appearances. Expensive varieties that looked good, such as the ones in Little Guo's shop that were responsible for acting cute, would definitely be brought along. Since there was no requirement for expensive breeds or pedigree certificates, with Zheng Tan as the ace, Xiaoguo would definitely use it. More than half of the advertisements in the store were supported by this non-expensive black cat, which had no pedigree certificate. There would probably be some programs that would require each family to bring out their trump cards to show off. Other than Zheng Tan, Xiaoguo had thought about it all night and couldn't think of a better candidate than this black cat. Although he knew that it wouldn't be easy to convince the Jiao family, Xiaoguo still decided to come and persuade the Jiao family. Thus, the scene that Zheng Tan saw when he entered the door was created. After hearing Xiaoguo's explanation, Jiao Ma's first reaction was to object. She couldn't leave, so she had to stay at home to take care of the children. She had 2 children at home, so she couldn't just leave. If her cat went somewhere far away, she would be worried too. She had raised her cat for almost 3 years, so she naturally knew her cat's temper. It didn't like cages, hated being put on a leash, was a bit casual, did whatever it wanted, had a bad temper, and was always suspicious. It was fine at home, but it would be hard to take care of outside. Once she listed all of its shortcomings, Jiao Ma couldn't stop. The more she thought about it, the more worried she became. Xiaoguo persuaded and assured her for an hour, but she still didn't give in. Jiao Ma sent an email to Jiao Pa and complained about what had happened. The next day, after reading the Jiao Pa's reply, Jiao Ma sighed heavily. "It's all because you spoiled it." Jiao Pa meant to let Zheng Tan make his own choice. Zheng Tan had analyzed the pros and cons last night. He wasn't really interested in being in the limelight, but if Green Wings, a newly established association, was still a weak chicken compared to other large organizations, Zheng Tan wouldn't be able to gain much from it. After all, his main source of income now was Xiaoguo. His cat still had to feed his family. This was the goal that Zheng Tan had set for himself. Xiaoguo was the person in charge of this event. If Green Wings lost face, Xiaoguo's store would lose face. If Xiaoguo's store lost face, Zheng Tan wouldn't benefit from it either. Moreover, Xiaoguo said that he would only be there for a week, so it wouldn't be long. Chapter 236. After getting Jiao Ma's approval, Xiaoguo was very excited. This time, he was aiming for a few awards. He wanted to get as many as he could to increase his influence. The time was set at the beginning of June. Xiaoguo had been busy preparing for the event and contacting some partners. This time, not only was there an exchange and competition between cats, but there were also related products and food displays. This was the main source of Xiaoguo's income. Now that his own brand in his store had been established, he could use this event to promote more. Therefore, this time, Xiaoguo was ambitious and ready to go all out. After spending Children's Day with little Pomelo at home, Zheng Tan began to run to the pet center. Xiaoguo had made a few mission plans, and Zheng Tan had to familiarize himself with them first. Jiao Ma also began to prepare for Zheng Tan's long trip. Even though Xiaoguo had made all kinds of promises, Jiao Ma was still worried. She worked in front of the computer for more than 3 hours and specially printed out a list to give to Charlie, who was in charge of looking after Zheng Tan. She also personally went to the pet center to talk to Charlie for more than an hour. Zheng Tan had heard so many things that Zheng Tan was tired of hearing them, but he didn't feel disgusted. This feeling of being valued was pretty good. The event location was in Linzhou City. Xiaoguo booked a bus and several accompanying cars this time. More than 80% of Xiaoguo's team members were with him. It took about 10 hours to drive from Chuhua City to Linzhou City. However, Xiaoguo had started to prepare in advance, so he didn't worry about any inconveniences during the 10 hours. There were a total of 6 cats participating in the event, 3 from Xiaoguo's store, and cats from other pet stores or clubs of the Green Wings Association. There were other participants in Chuhua City, but those cat owners didn't travel with Xiaoguo. When the time came, those cat owners would fly to Linzhou City by themselves. If they wanted to travel together, they would contact Xiaoguo. Different from the other cats in cages, Zheng Tan had a lot of freedom. He occupied a seat and slept there. Charlie sat next to him. Charlie was now a real cat nanny, and Zheng Tan's special nanny during working hours. Charlie looked at the cat sleeping peacefully next to him, and then looked at the person in front of him who had to take the cat out of the cage to comfort it because the cat he was taking care of kept crying. He sighed in his heart. The cats he took care of had different temperaments and personalities. Each cat had its own advantages, and each had its own troubles. Although the cat next to him was brave and had a strong mentality, it had too many bad habits. Charlie opened the folder in his hand and flipped through the materials inside. Among them were the precautions that Jiao Ma had given him for taking care of her black cat. In fact, Charlie had some understanding of Zheng Tan's habits even without these. After all, they had worked together for so long. But every time he looked at these precautions, Charlie felt a stomachache. Forget it. As long as there was no mess during the event, he could accept the rest. Midway, The team stopped to rest for a while, eat lunch, and go to the bathroom. Jing Tan also asked Charlie to take him to the bathroom during mealtime. He never used cat litter, only the bathroom. After eating and drinking to her heart's content, Jing Tan returned to the car and continued to sleep without a care in the world. Charlie sent a text message to his girlfriend. Cats nowadays are really hard to take care of. But the difference this time was that there was an extra person and a cat on the bus. This cat came from a club in Chuhua City. The owner of the cat was a woman in her 40s or 50s. She had taken her cat to sit in the car at the back. She probably felt that the car was too boring, so she came to the bus after resting. Now she was bragging about how good her cat was, how delicate it was, and how many awards it had won in the past. Zheng Tan had been sleeping well, but he was woken up by the woman's shrill voice. At this time, many people on the bus were preparing to rest, but they didn't expect that there would be an extra person. It was said that this woman's husband was also a vice president in the Green Wings Association, but he didn't have as much authority as Xiaoguo. But the people on the bus still had to give her some face. Even if they were annoyed, they didn't show it on their faces. Zheng Tan couldn't stand it. This woman was too noisy, and he was annoyed just listening to her. He got up and looked over there. The cat in the woman's arms was a foreign short-hair cat. It looked really cute and well-behaved, but its owner was too noisy. Maybe it noticed Zheng Tan's unkind gaze, but the cat glanced at Zheng Tan and then shrank into its owner's arms. The woman, who was showing off her cat and almost criticized the other cats as worthless, felt a strange movement in her arms. She quickly stroked the cat's fur and comforted it. As she comforted it, she called out, "My darling, my little sweetheart," which gave Zheng Tan goosebumps. The woman followed her cat's gaze and looked in Zheng Tan's direction. Her heart trembled. It wasn't that she was timid, but she felt a chill down her spine when she suddenly met the black cat's cold eyes. She didn't like all black cats because they looked too ferocious. Previously, she didn't even notice that Xiaoguo had a black cat with her. In her eyes, there was only her own cat. Now that she knew, she couldn't help but feel uneasy. The cat in her arms also curled up in fear. The woman and the cat suddenly fell silent. The people on the bus looked at Zheng Tan, and then looked at the woman and the cat. They were happy. Although this black cat had a bad temper, sometimes it was quite useful. No wonder their boss always liked to take this cat out. When the motorcade stopped at a gas station to refuel, the woman got out of the bus with the foreign short-hair cat in her arms and went to another car. When she got out of the bus, she complained that Xiaoguo had brought such a cat and that it was embarrassing. After being glared at by Xiaoguo, she turned around and got into another car. Around 8 o'clock that night, the motorcade arrived at a hotel in Lin City. This was a place that had been booked in advance, and the pets could be settled there. Zheng Tan was still a special case. He was directly taken in and had a bed to himself. In the evening, Jiaoma called Charlie to find out about Zheng Tan's situation. They rested in the hotel for a day. The event would start the day after tomorrow, which was this Saturday, and it would last for 2 days. From 9 to 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, the exhibitors had to be checked by the veterinarian before the event began. Although this was only an exchange event with unlimited cat breeds, there was also a cat public exhibition program, which was divided into 4 groups: kitten group, adult cat group, sterilized cat group, and house cat group. The first 3 groups were definitely more expensive cat breeds. This event gathered rare breeds from different countries, including Persian cats, hairless cats, Garfield cats, Koenig's curly-haired cats, ragdolls, Maine cats, and other international famous cats with a total value of nearly 10 million yuan. It was enough to satisfy the audience. In addition, the activities on Saturday included a charity bazaar, some lectures on cat love, and a quiz on cat love. On Sunday, there were more interactive activities that were specially arranged. Many people hated cats, and the reason why they were not close to cats was mostly attributed to the temperament of cats. Most cats liked to scratch people. When they were happy, they would talk to you, and when they were unhappy, they would ignore you. This time, the organizers wanted to show people the other side of cats. When Zheng Tan was listening to Charlie's conversation on the bus, he knew that some specially trained cats and some very docile and cute cats were invited to the interactive activities to make the audience closer to the cats, or to have a better impression of the cats. Zheng Tan's task was on Sunday. Xiaoguo's task for Zheng Tan was parkour. This was not difficult for Zheng Tan, and this time, Zheng Tan was working with a beautiful woman with a great figure. Beautiful women were indispensable everywhere. Being able to work with a beautiful woman made Zheng Tan feel a little better. He heard that there would be lectures on pet health and medical treatment, consultations, exchanges on pet cat daily care techniques, and a series of activities for pet cats, such as free beauty treatments, epidemic prevention, and physical examinations for pet cats. The purpose was to spread the concept of a fashionable and healthy cat love life. There would definitely be a lot of people and a lot of cats. On Saturday, Zheng Tan and the other participating cats were inspected. Zheng Tan saw all kinds of cats. There were a few hairless cats. Zheng Tan stared at them for a long time. Fortunately, the temperature was still warm. If it was winter, he would have to wear clothes and stay in a heated room. There were also curly-haired cats and curly-eared cats. Zheng Tan looked at them with interest. He was used to seeing foreign short-haired cats with a flat face. Looking at these strange cats was a novelty, especially from the perspective of a cat. He didn't know if it was because of the different perspective, but the cats that he used to think were all kinds of deformed and weird now felt okay. Zheng Tan could see a lot of emotions in the eyes of these cats. Some cats that looked fierce were actually timid. Some looked powerful but were actually timid. They were scared easily. During the inspection, a cat let out a fart that scared itself. It was a silent fart. Zheng Tan wouldn't have known if she hadn't heard it from the people over there. But she still laughed for a long time after she found out. Looking at all kinds of cats, Zheng Tan thought, what would happen if peanut candy came? However, it was better not to think too much about the impossible. Peanut candy had always been left alone. Li Yuanba had personally taken care of it since it was young. It loved to cause trouble, so Xiaoguo and the others didn't dare to bring peanut candy along. If it came, it wouldn't be peaceful. It was said that the total value of the cats participating in the exhibition was close to 10 million yuan. If it accidentally scratched the champion cats, Xiaoguo would have to pay a lot of compensation. In the venue, charmingly naive Persian cats and chubby British shorthair cats stared at the people coming and going with their big watery eyes. Occasionally, they would call out to their owners who were holding them. Looking at how calm they were, it probably wasn't their first time participating in this kind of event. Chapter 237. Zheng Tan was led by Charlie, and there was a tall beauty next to him. Charlie had been blushing and stuttering. Although he already had a girlfriend, he was still nervous in the face of such a beauty. This beauty was Zheng Tan's partner in the interactive session tomorrow. Her name was Jean Ling. It was said that she was a model and also a client of the pet center. This time, she was invited by Xiaoguo to help. Zheng Tan looked at Jean Ling critically and gave her 80 points. He felt that it would be better if the skirt was shorter. Unfortunately, it couldn't be too revealing. There were many children who came here. If they were dressed too skimpily, the parents of their children would definitely complain. There had been complaints about skimpy clothes at famous cat shows before. Therefore, even if it was summer, the people working in the venue would still pay attention to their image. After getting familiar with Jean Ling, Zheng Tan left Charlie and nestled in Jean Ling's arms. Although Jean Ling didn't have much contact with Zheng Tan, she was very active. As long as Zheng Tan made a slight move, she knew where to go. She had heard that this cat was very arrogant and had a bad temper. The people in Xiaoguo's shop all followed its wishes, and she wouldn't refute the cat's wishes. It would be easier for them to cooperate with each other tomorrow. Zheng Tan was not interested in the competitions of the precious cat species. He just glanced at them and asked Jean Ling to go to the house cat group. This time, the house cat group was exhibiting a dragon-ly cat owned by a client of Xiaoguo's pet center. This dragon-ly cat was participating in a public competition for the first time and was a little anxious in the cage. Every cat that participated in the competition had to reach out and hug it, feel its bone mass, look at its muscle state, head, body, tail, and limbs, coordination, and the health of the cat, and so on. When Zheng Tan looked over there, a foreign judge was holding a cat, touching the cat's fur and evaluating the cat. The host next to him was holding a microphone and translating the judge's words to the audience. The cat was also very patient. It didn't show any impatience after being hugged and touched. It was probably used to it. Of course, These judges must know cats very well and know how to better comfort a cat. Originally, in Xiaoguo's mind, the best cat in the house cat group should be Zheng Tan. Unfortunately, the Jiao family didn't agree, and Zheng Tan didn't want to go. Not only did it have to be locked in a cage for onlookers, but most of the cats participating in that kind of competition had good tempers. The judges wouldn't have too much reaction when they held them. Zheng Tan definitely couldn't stand these. Another reason was that it was said that non-sterilized cats that won this kind of award were basically treated as breeding cats. Zheng Tan definitely didn't want to have anything to do with a female cat. There were also many people in the house cat group. Compared with the expensive cat breeds, the cats in the house cat group were more approachable. Expensive cats were only used for viewing. It wasn't easy to raise them. They were too expensive and took a lot of effort. However, people had the most contact with house cats, such as dragonly cats, which were all common cats. Zheng Tan looked around. Other than the commonly seen cats and the popular dragonly, there were also Linqing Persian cats that people were interested in. There were 2 Persian cats participating in the house cat group competition. One was a white Persian cat with mandarin duck eyes, and the other was a whipping hydrangea. The so-called whipping hydrangea looked similar to the white Persian cat, but its tail was black, and there was a black patch on its head. Its tail was long and could be swung to the black patch on its head, so it was called whipping hydrangea. Speaking of which, this cat reminded Zheng Tan of the cat called Longan that he had seen before. It was just that Longan's hair was short and there was no black patch on its head. At the house cat competition, one of the judges was from China. She looked young and was quite good-looking. She could be considered a beauty. This beautiful judge attracted the attention of many spectators. When she evaluated a participating house cat, she also stroked, teased, and talked to the cat. The cat also became very docile in her hands. Charlie flipped through the information in his hand and talked to Jean Ling about the beautiful judge. Hearing their words, Zheng Tan knew that the beautiful judge named Gong Qin was also a veterinary professional. She had taken her own cat to participate in more than one competition, but later she didn't have time to take care of the cat because of work. Later, she didn't raise it much. However, she was qualified as a CFA judge. Sometimes she was invited to be a judge in such activities and had contact with more cats. While Charlie and Jean Ling were talking about the beautiful referee, Zheng Tan looked around. Suddenly, her eyes paused as if she saw an acquaintance. No, it was 2 acquaintances, and Zheng Tan jumped down from Jean Ling's arms and walked over there. Jean Ling was shocked when she saw the cat jump away. She was afraid that the cat would run away, but then she saw that the black cat didn't run around, but walked to the side area. She was relieved and followed Charlie. In an area on the side, several animal charity organizations were there. Some cat owners gathered there to consult. There were rows of chairs next to them. The people who came in to watch and some cat owners who participated in the activities rested there when they were free. Fang Mengmeng was holding a pamphlet given by the animal charity organization in her hand and was looking through it. Fang Xiaokong was chatting with someone next to her. It seemed that he met an acquaintance here again and was being pulled to chat. Next to Fang Mengmeng was a cat with tricolored patches on its body. In the area around this cat, there was no other cat except for it within a radius of 5 meters. Even the cats that were brought there to rest would scream at it with their hair standing on end, pressing their ears and shouting for the cat owner to take them away. Zheng Tan calculated the time. To me, this guy was almost 1 year old. Sometimes, Zheng Tan was envious of the Monseigneur's good genes. It could be seen by looking at Peanut Candy and Demi. Although they were the 3rd generation in terms of size, they were obviously bigger than other cats. Of course, there were many cats that came here to participate in the competition, especially those cat breeds that were larger in size. Coupled with their fluffy long hair, they looked very big, so Demi was not too outstanding. However, Demi's hair was not as fluffy as those long-haired cats. If the hair was removed, Demi was definitely bigger than those cats. Zheng Tan walked around the people coming and going and observed Demi, who was quietly squatting there. In Zheng Tan's heart, he had always classified himself as the same generation as Li Yuanba and the Monsignor. In this way, Peanut Candy was his nephew, and Demi was his grandnephew. Demi had inherited the aura of the Monseigneur and Li Yuanba very well. It could be seen from the reactions of the surrounding cats. Moreover, when Demi pulled a long face, it directly reminded Zheng Tan of Li Yuanba. Demi was squatting there with its eyelids slightly lowered, as if it did not care about everything around it. It was not until Zheng Tan walked over that it raised its head and looked at Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan did not know if this little guy still remembered him. After all, when Demi was taken away, it was still so small. Also, if this child inherited its father's temperament, would it fight with him on the spot? Just as Zheng Tan was thinking about whether to get closer, Demi had already come up to him. It sniffed, and the initial wariness in its eyes lessened, and there was a sense of intimacy. When Fang Mingming's gaze moved away from the small booklet and looked at Demi, she saw Demi, who was usually cold to other cats and would even slap them if they were annoyed, tilting its head and rubbing against the black cat. Fang Mingming stared at Zheng Tan for a while, then suddenly shouted, "Are you black charcoal?" Fang Xiaokong, who was chatting with someone, heard her and looked over. His gaze fell on Zheng Tan. "Yo, black charcoal, why are you here?" Because his daughter said that she wanted to come to Linzhou City to participate in this event, Fang Xiaokong specially cleared his weekend to accompany his daughter on the plane. His wife did not follow, so that Fang Xiaokong could perform more and spend more time with his daughter. His daughter wanted to bring Demi over, and Fang Xiaokong had already prepared all kinds of documents. At this time, Charlie and Jean Ling also came over, and Fang Xiaokong chatted with them for a while. "There's a competition tomorrow? That's good, let's go support them tomorrow," Fang Xiaokong said with a look of anticipation. Fang Mengmeng nodded at the side. "Mr. Fang, is this your family's cat? Which competition did it participate in?" Charlie asked. Jean Ling was also curious. The cat in front of her felt a little different from other cats, but she couldn't tell why. Could it be a cat breed that she didn't know? "This is my daughter's cat, but it didn't participate in the competition." Fang Xiaokong didn't say too much. Since he knew that Charlie was from the pet center, he was on guard. Air Mao said that Demi's father was in the pet center. In the event venue, Fang Xiaokong had a special certificate. Demi didn't participate in any competitions, but was brought in for a walk. Then, Fang Mengmeng could communicate more with the cat friends and ask about raising cats. The degree of freedom was much greater than the cat owners who brought in the competition. Anyway, there were people who knew, so such a certificate was very simple. Charlie and Jean Ling wanted to take a closer look because they were curious about Demi. When they were about to reach out and touch it, Demi raised its head and glanced at them. Charlie and Jean Ling's hearts immediately trembled. This cat's eyes were so cold, and they felt that this cat was not to be trifled with. Cough. This cat must be very troublesome to raise, right? Charlie retracted his hand and said, "It's not troublesome, Demi is very obedient." When Fang Mengmeng mentioned Demi, she smiled and squinted her eyes. She reached out her tender white hand and touched Demi's head. Many cats gave people a completely different feeling when they had a straight face and when they acted cute. For example, Demi who faced Charlie and Jean Ling and Zheng Tan and Fang Mengmeng. One was cold and the other was gentle. One was difficult to get close to, and the other took the initiative to get close to. When Demi raised its head to look at people, due to the lighting in this area of the venue, Demi's pupils shrank slightly. Together with Demi's straight face that resembled Li Yuanba's, it looked much sharper. When its pupils dilated due to excitement, coupled with its coquettish actions, it let people know that this cat could also get close to people. That was even more adorable. Charlie looked at the difference between before and after and laughed dryly. He thought for a while and said, "Mr. Fang, your Demi is quite similar to the two cats in our pet center. I'm telling you, I'm definitely not lying to you. One of the cats is called Li Yuanba, and the other cat is Li Yuanba's son, called Peanut Candy." Fang Xiaokong was already thinking of leaving. The moment Charlie opened his mouth, he said the two taboo names that Air Mao mentioned. Anyway, his daughter had played here for a long time, so he might as well leave first. When Fang Xiaokong held Fang Mingming's hand and left, Demi raised its tail and did not look around. It followed closely beside Fang Xiaokong and Fang Mengming. It was too lazy to pay attention to the people and cats around it. Chapter 238. On Saturday, Zheng Tan familiarized himself with the general events and layout of the venue. There were many people who came over that day, especially those who liked cats but couldn't raise cats for various reasons. They were addicted to watching, and when they left, they discussed coming together tomorrow. When they returned to the hotel, Zheng Tan listened to Charlie and the others talking about the day's events. Xiaoguo went out to expand his network. The harvest of the first day of the event made Xiaoguo satisfied. He won 3 medals. It was not a good result, but it was not bad either. It was enough to keep up appearances. Xiaoguo's main focus was on cat food and peripheral products. The sales of cat food were good today, and there were a few people who contacted Xiaoguo to supply it. It was said that the cat of the woman who was with Xiaoguo's team and who was shouting on the bus in the middle of the way did not get a result that satisfied her this time. The cat almost fought with another cat that participated at the time. However, for the woman, although it was a pity that she did not win an award, she still loved her cat. This made Zheng Tan's impression of her a lot better. In fact, many cat owners who came to participate in this event, even if their cats didn't win any awards, they were only there to play a minor role. They didn't care much about the gains and losses, unlike those who mainly did commercial-oriented advertisements for breeding cats. At the venue, Zheng Tan saw several cat owners comforting each other. Some of them even comforted their cats. They did not care if their cats were depressed because they did not win an award. Perhaps they were also telling themselves that the important thing was to participate. In their hearts, their cats were always the best. Zheng Tan did not listen carefully to the discussions of others. He only knew that Xiaoguo and the others had a good harvest on the first day. He had to prepare more for tomorrow's project. In the evening, Zheng Tan and Jin Ling practiced together again. In fact, it was mainly Zheng Tan who was running. Jin Ling just had to sit there and be a qualified vase. When Xiaoguo came back at night, he was worried that Zheng Tan might be under some kind of psychological pressure. He didn't expect to find that Zheng Tan had already fallen asleep on the bed. Compared to Zheng Tan's calmness, Xiaoguo was still a little worried. Even if the cat performed well when his team was shooting advertisements, there would be too many people at the venue tomorrow. The audience, especially the children, would be screaming and yelling, which would affect the cat's mood. Today, several of the participating cats were in bad condition. Sometimes, slow cats had their advantages. Take the few cats in Xiaoguo's store for example. If you really wanted to talk about psychological quality, there was nothing much to talk about. To put it bluntly, their reactions were slow, and their temperaments were too gentle. Xiaoguo knew that Zheng Tan was different from other cats. Moreover, because of the great harvest on the first day, he hoped that more people would know about Green Wings, obviously, Pet Center, and the products in the industry chain that he had created. There should be good results, right? In the evening, Xiaoguo, who was supposed to fall asleep after drinking too much, had insomnia. He didn't fall asleep until the second half of the night. The next day, the second day of the event, Zheng Tan got up in the morning and had breakfast refreshed. He picked up Charlie's wet and warm towel and wiped his face. Then he followed Xiaoguo and the others to the venue. Before she got out of the car, Zheng Tan looked out of the car window. There were a lot of people outside the venue. There were a lot of sheds selling pet necessities, and there were also a variety of cat climbing frames on display. There was a long line at the other entrance of the venue. There were many people who brought cats here today because there were a series of activities for pet cats, such as free hairdressing, epidemic prevention, physical examination, and so on. Of course, the free activities were limited. If you wanted something more detailed, you would have to contact and make an appointment. Then you would go directly to the physical store. Today's free activities were just to show off to the cat owners. The layout of the venue was also slightly changed. There was a space in the center for the cats to perform and interact. As soon as Xiaoguo arrived at the venue, he was pulled over to discuss things. When he left, he asked Charlie and Jin Ling to take Zheng Tan to familiarize himself with the environment. Zheng Tan looked at the staff over there who were checking the cats and the person in charge who participated in this event. By the way, they were confirming whether there were any objections to the order of appearance. After all, the order of appearance was also drawn by drawing lots. No one could blame anyone, and some people who couldn't come in time because of unexpected situations would change the order. There were 10 cats participating in this segment. Zheng Tan was the 7th. If it started at 9 o'clock, according to the calculation of 15 minutes per cat, it would get to 11 o'clock. Of course, there was no absolute statement about the time of each cat. Some might end in 5 minutes, and some might last longer. The deciding factor was the cat's performance and their popularity. They could attract more attention from the audience and ask for photos. The higher the popularity, the longer the duration. Zheng Tan looked at the list in Charlie's hand, then looked away uninterestedly. At this time, some of the cat owners and cats who participated in this segment arrived one after another. Zheng Tan glanced at them. The cats looked very smart. The interaction with their owners or trainers showed how familiar they were with each other. Moreover, these cats didn't have a leash, but a few of them were wearing small clothes. They looked quite familiar. Zheng Tan also found that most of these cats were not purebred expensive cats. Also, many expensive breeds had many defects. Some people were already standing on the second floor, looking at the open space on the first floor expectantly. "BC, let's go," Charlie called out to Zheng Tan. They were going there to report and sign. The inspectors needed to look at the photos of people and cats during the registration. Because they were going to appear in public, Xiaogue asked them to call Zheng Tan BC. The name of the contestant on the registration list was Black Sea, and the breed was a domestic cat. There were only 10 contestants, so it didn't take long to check and sign on the spot. Jean Ling took Zheng Tan and rested on the side after wandering around. It's starting. Someone in the crowd called out to his partner. Zheng Tan glanced at the crowd that was gathering quickly. Many people were holding cameras and DV. A few fathers let their children sit on their necks, while the children held the DV and took photos. Seeing so many people paying attention to him, Zheng Tan, who had a casual attitude, felt that his performance later must not be too bad. Since he had decided to participate in the event, he had to show some ability so that those with cameras and DV would not be too disappointed. The owner of the first cat to appear had put in more effort. The clothes on the cat would not interfere with its movements, and when it appeared, it stood on a ball and rolled out. Rolling a ball looked very simple, but in fact, it was not. When Zheng Tan first tried it in the pet center, he failed several times. Later, he got used to it. Good. Someone clapped and cheered. He didn't know if it was a trick. After that person cheered and applauded, the surrounding crowd also applauded. After the cat rolled the ball, it also jumped in circles, drilled in circles, and jumped obstacles. Although people had seen these projects in circus performances on TV, the feeling was different on the spot. At the end of the performance, the cat stood on the man's shoulder and bowed to the audience, causing another round of applause. It didn't react much to those who took photos and turned on the flash. It just narrowed its eyes. In general, it was calm. After the performance, several lucky audience members who had drawn ticket numbers went to take photos with the cat and its owner. Zheng Tan observed carefully. A few of the people in charge had already started telling the people in the crowd not to use the flashing lights. After all, not every cat was as indifferent to the flashing lights as the cat at the beginning of the show. The next few cat performances were similar. Some male audience members' attention was on the cat owners with cat ears. There was a cat group's musical performance that attracted a lot of attention. The musical instruments were different from professional instruments. Some of them were more like children's toys, but they could make sounds. Moreover, there were special modifications on them that made it easier for cats to operate. Although the cat group only played a song like "Happy Birthday to You," which was very simple, and there were a few wrong notes in the middle of the performance, people still applauded enthusiastically. The cat in front of Zheng Tan performed single parallel bars. It only used its 2 front paws to move from one end of the bars to the other. When it played the horizontal bar, there were a few more movements. For a cat, it was very good to be able to do that. Zheng Tan had thought that the performance was too simple and that people would be dissatisfied. However, it turned out that he had thought too much. People didn't have high expectations for animals. Even if the cats only jumped 2 circles and did 2 somersaults, people would still feel that it was worth it to come. 7th, Black Sea from the Green Wings Association in Chuhua City. When the host announced the name, his heart actually stopped for a second. There were very few cats with this name. Even if it was an English name, This name was too strange. Black was fine, but there was also a C? What did C mean? Could there be a B, and so on? After the audience heard the host's name, some people became excited. F*CK, is it that BC? A live BC? I didn't expect to see a live BC performance on this trip. I used to watch its cat food advertisement video and felt good, but this is a live show. I can't shout cut. I don't know how the performance will be. What is BC? Is it very famous? It's obvious that you don't mix in the XX pet form. This cat is very famous in the XX form. My cat food is the brand of this cat's advertisement. Some people were talking about who Black C was, and the props had already begun to be set up in the field. Looking at the props that were set up one by one, the attention of the onlookers gradually shifted. F*CK, what is that prop? Is it a wall? Those stools marked with letters are a little strange. Are they going to go in a zigzag line? What a beauty! Is this going to be a Beauty and the Beast show? Where is the beast? Amidst the discussion, Zheng Tan and Jean Ling walked into the field. Jean Ling was dressed in a small and fresh style today. She looked more like a little girl next door. When she smiled, she had a sweet and warm feeling. This made some of the male audience stare at her. Zheng Tan didn't bring any decorations or those small clothes. It could be said that he was naked on the field. When he entered the field, Jean Ling was the one who attracted attention. However, there were also people who paid attention to Zheng Tan and knew more about cats. They could tell that the cat that was appearing now was different from the cats in front of him. Chapter 239. After Jean Ling entered the venue, she sat down on a high chair at the side. There was a simple shelf beside her, and Zheng Tan separated from Jean Ling and continued to walk to the other side of the venue. Zheng Tan and Jean Ling were on both sides of the venue. There was a prop wall that was more than 4 meters tall near Jean Ling. The wall was at a right angle of 90 degrees. It stood upright, separating Jean Ling and Zheng Tan. If one looked from the second floor of the venue, Jean Ling was sitting inside the right angle wall. Most of the audience could see Jean Ling and Zheng Tan, but Zheng Tan and Jean Ling could not see each other. They were blocked by the wall. There was nothing on the wall that was suitable for climbing, but the wall was a little rough. Zheng Tan came to the expected place and stood there. Whether it was those who had performed or those who did not bring their cats to perform, they all looked over there in confusion. Didn't this woman in the venue need to follow her cat? One had to know that during the performance, they were always by their cat's side. Even if they were not by their cat's side, they were not far away. They had never seen a situation where they were so far away from their cats and were directly separated by something. Just as people were thinking about what this woman wanted to do, Jean Ling took a wooden guitar that Charlie handed to her. She plucked the strings with her fingers and began to play. The surrounding discussions gradually quieted down because of the sound of the guitar. The clear notes scattered in every corner of the venue. They were freely retracted in Jean Ling's fingers, free and casual, as if the sincere and pure emotions of a young person were naturally revealed. Looking at Jean Ling sitting there, she was dressed in fresh clothes, and the corners of her lips were slightly curled with a faint smile. When she plucked the strings, it made people feel as if this person was a dancing warm fire. Without a doubt, at the moment of the opening, Jean Ling was the focus of the crowd's attention. Some people were already thinking that even if the cat did not perform well, they would still applaud and cheer for it just for the sake of this guitar song. On the other side of the neglected white right-angled wall, Zheng Tan also moved. When Jean Ling played the guitar to a certain note, Zheng Tan jumped onto the first stool marked with the letter Th, and then jumped onto the second stool marked with the letter B. Zheng Tan felt that this kind of performance was extremely retarded and lowered his IQ. However, it was clear that Xiaogua understood the audience's thoughts better. Zheng Tan was a bystander. If the audience watched Zheng Tan jump on the stool according to the alphabetical order, they would praise this cat for being amazing. Because it did not jump randomly, it proved that it jumped in the right order. Placing so many stools, especially when there was no conductor to guide it, was also a highlight. And that was indeed the case. Some people in the crowd had already begun to notice. Some children were even reciting the pinyin alphabet along with Zheng Tan. They were more familiar with Pinyin than English. As long as one child started, the rest of the children, who were brought by their parents, began to perform as well. Therefore, one could hear the childish sounds of bo, ci, do, fo, gu, and so on. The children only looked at the jumping order of the black cat in the field, while some people saw more. "That cat is stepping on the beat," someone exclaimed softly. When the people around heard this, they stared at the black cat in the field for a while and found that every time the cat jumped onto a stool, it would step on the spot a few times. They didn't pay attention to it before and thought that the cat was adjusting. Now, it seemed that there was another mystery. It's true. This cat knows music? No way. It should have been trained like this during training. It's just a live accompaniment, someone said, thinking that he had guessed the truth. Zheng Tan ignored the reactions of the people around him. He jumped a few stools in the first stage. It was just a simple beginning. Due to the limited size of the field, walking in a straight line would not have much expressiveness. Therefore, the stools were placed along the line in the order of the alphabet. After jumping over the first few stools, Zheng Tan jumped onto a stool. There was a shelf next to the stool, and there was a long paper box on the shelf. Zheng Tan opened the paper box and took out a rose from it. The rose had been treated, and the thorns had been removed. The branch, which had been cut to the right length, was wrapped in a layer of clean paper. Zheng Tan picked up the rose and returned to the stool next to him. He stepped on the stool and waited for the next beat to begin. The people around who were originally watching the show gradually stopped paying attention to Jin Ling. Instead, they focused on the cat in the field. They were curious about what the cat would do next. With the rose in his mouth, he walked rhythmically with cat steps across the horizontal bar. The distance between the two adjacent letter stools was widened. If Zheng Tan jumped directly, he could of course jump, but according to Xiaoguo's plan, that was not the case. The rhythm of the guitar song gradually began to speed up. Zheng Tan stepped on the rhythm 3 times at first, but he stepped on it twice. Moreover, he jumped on the stool at the back and widened the distance. There was a vertical board between the two stools. When Zheng Tan jumped up, he used the board in the middle to jump to the next stool. Just like the skill that Li Yuanba had taught Zheng Tan to jump through the window, he used the object in the middle to exert force and change direction. As long as he controlled the force and direction well, he could land steadily on the target location. Zheng Tan had also done this when he was shooting advertisements. One of the stools was probably not fixed properly. When Zheng Tan jumped, it wobbled a little. The people around him felt their hearts skip a beat. When they saw the cat land firmly on another stool, they finally exhaled the breath that they had been holding in. Since it was parkour, it was naturally cool to run. As everyone's attention gradually focused on Zheng Tan, the rhythm of the guitar song became faster and faster. Zheng Tan, who had to wait for the rhythm on the stool every time he jumped, no longer waited. After speeding up, he began to run in people's eyes. In addition to stepping on the stool, he also jumped over the paper circle covered with a thin layer of paper, and then jumped from one grid to another. He was very fast. If they hadn't seen the hole in the middle of the paper circle, people wouldn't have been able to tell that the cat had just passed through the middle of the paper circle. The onlookers only felt that the black shadow in the field was getting faster and faster, like a hurricane blowing through the field. There was not much discussion around the field. Everyone's eyes were chasing the fast black shadow that flashed by, for fear of missing a link. After successfully passing through the obstacles in the middle and jumping over the last stool, Zheng Tan had already arrived in front of the white wall. Black and white, a sharp contrast. Just as people were thinking about whether the cat was going to climb over the wall or find a shortcut to go around it, Zheng Tan did not stop or slow down. He jumped up and climbed up at a right angle. In an instant, he climbed from the bottom of the wall to the top. F***CK. Spider-Man. No, it's Spider-Cat. This cat climbing over the wall is too awesome. No, I have to learn from it. Although people around them began to discuss again, everyone's eyes did not move away from the field. They looked at the black cat that skillfully climbed over the high wall. It held the rose in its mouth and jumped onto the shelf next to Jin Ling. It was as if it had descended with the night. Against the dark night, the flames would be even brighter and more dazzling. At this time, the cheerful guitar melody ended with a melody, and the final ending sound seemed to be echoing in the field. Jean Ling's gaze moved from the guitar to the black cat next to her. The faint smile on her face deepened. She raised her arm and took the rose in the cat's mouth. After the performance, Jean Ling bowed to the surroundings to thank them. Zheng Tan also lowered his head and nodded to the surroundings twice. The applause from the surroundings continued. Some people were lamenting that this cat was really smart. Some people were lamenting how others trained their cats. Some people were thinking about how to train their cats to use this method to chase after people. Jean Ling heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. Although she looked calm just now, she was actually worried to death in her heart. Usually, training and live performances were completely different. She had participated in many performances during university, so her psychological quality was strong. But what about that cat? She could not see the situation on the other side, but it seemed that everything was going smoothly. Zheng Tan did not look proud at all. Just like the cat in front of him, he did not know that he had succeeded. In fact, he felt that the performance just now was really low level. To think that he had a cat's body and a human's heart, and he had to be praised by the standards of a cat. It was embarrassing to hear it. There would be no ranking in this segment, so there was not much competitive pressure. However, it was also very important to attract popularity. After the host asked Jean Ling to draw the lucky audience, someone went over to take a photo. A mother brought her child here, so the opportunity to take a photo would definitely be given to her child. However, the child seemed to be a little afraid. She bit her finger and stood in front of Zheng Tan and hesitated for a moment. Then, under her mother's encouragement and Jean Ling's guarantee, she approached Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan squatted on the 1-meter-high shelf. The child's line of sight was just at the same level as Zheng Tan's. Seeing the child standing there stiffly, Zheng Tan reached out his palm and placed it on the child's head. Then he leaned his head against the child's head and looked at the camera. If it was a human, he would be able to put his hand on the shoulder and act like a good brother. Unfortunately, his hand was too short. However, Zheng Tan was in a good mood today. After the mission was completed, he did not care about anything else. It was also not bad to attract popularity at the same time. The photographer hired by the venue was also a professional. He captured the scene just now and showed the photo to the mother and son. Both mother and son were very satisfied. The child wanted to take another photo, and the photographer agreed. This time, the child was not afraid. He stood beside Zheng Tan with a serious face. He raised his hand and made a pose of Ultraman, releasing a big move. What made the surrounding audience laugh was that the black cat beside the child also stood up and made a similar pose. Although it was not a standard cross shape, it looked like it. It was enough. After looking at the second photo, the child laughed happily. He was addicted to taking photos and shouted that he wanted to continue taking photos. However, there were still people waiting to take photos behind him. Moreover, there were already some children at the scene who were shouting to come over and take photos. A few parents went over to negotiate with the person in charge next to them and learned that there was still a chance in the afternoon. However, they were taking photos for free now. When the time came, they would have to spend money. Of course, these parents could still afford to spend money on taking photos. After persuading their children, they temporarily stopped. The child just now was also persuaded by his mother to leave. Before he left, he grumbled, "I'm not done with the pose yet." After receiving a guarantee that he would continue taking photos in the afternoon, he left with 2 photos in his arms, satisfied. While Zheng Tan was busy taking photos with the lucky audience members who had been selected, a few people came out of the capital airport with their luggage. "Hey, are you guys going straight home?" "Of course, I haven't seen my family for a long time. Naturally, I'll go back first. I've already booked the plane tickets. I have relatives in Beijing. My car is with them. I'm going to drive back to Chuhua City tomorrow. If anyone is going the same way, I'll bring them back together." "Isn't Jiao Mingsheng also in Chuhua City? Where's Jiao Mingsheng?" "He's calling home. This time, he finished his project and came back early. He didn't tell his family. These people were all overseas for exchange or to participate in some cooperative research projects. Some of them had gone out to gain experience. This time, it just so happened that a few of them came back together. While they were talking, Associate Professor Jiao Jiao, Zheng Tan's cat father, hung up the phone and walked over. "I'm not going back to Chuhua City for now. I'm going to Lin City," Associate Professor Jiao said. "Why are you going to Lin City?" someone asked. Chapter 240. Have you remembered all the things to pay attention to? Yes, but boss, do we really have to make it so complicated? Although there were a lot of people who wanted to take photos in the morning, most of them just said so. Usually, not many people will go in the afternoon, right? The people in the working group took a notebook and wrote down the things that Xiaogua had just said. They also raised their own concerns. "You don't have to worry about this. I'll take care of it." Xiaogua didn't seem to be worried. He patted the staff on the shoulder and asked them to set up the venue for the photo shoot in the afternoon. After the staff left, Xiaogua had some time to eat a few pieces of watermelon. Although he had been busy since yesterday and was physically and mentally tired, he had gained a lot, especially from the performance in the morning. Although he didn't go to see it, he heard from Charlie and others that among the 10 cats, the black cat from their shop was the most popular. When he thought of Charlie's description of the situation at that time, Xiaogua felt funny. At that time, there were too many people who wanted to take photos. The lucky audience wanted to pose, but after the photo shoot, they didn't expect the cat to be so cooperative. They felt that they had a new idea and wanted to take a few more photos. Therefore, it took a long time. Usually, when the first group finished their performance, the next group took the time to set up the props. However, the group behind Zheng Tan had been setting up the props for a long time, but the photo shoot was still not over. The people behind them were so angry that they drank several bottles of mineral water. Yes, they said that there was still time in the afternoon to take photos with the celebrity cats. None of the cats who won awards on Saturday left. The organizers arranged places for everyone to take photos. There were plenty of opportunities, but the photo shoot on the spot was free. If they waited until the afternoon, they would have to pay. Some people didn't care about the money, but it was inevitable that some people were greedy. Xiaogua asked someone to count the people who took the initiative to contact him and make an appointment for the photo shoot in the afternoon. There were about 10 people, and some people were hesitating and hadn't decided. However, Xiaogua wouldn't let go of this great publicity opportunity. However, Xiaogua glanced at his phone. He had received a call from Associate Professor Jiao, saying that he had returned to China. If the cat's father returned to China, it would probably be more difficult to ask that cat for help in the future. In short, he had to seize this opportunity to gain more popularity. After Zheng Tan took an afternoon nap in the lounge, he was pulled over to prepare for the photo shoot. Just now, Xiaogua had told him that Jiao Pa was back and would come over in the afternoon. On New Year's Eve, the Jiao Pa had called and said that he would only be back in the second half of the year if he was fast. She didn't expect him to be back so soon. She heard that he had bought a 2-hour flight from Beijing to Linzhou at 1 p.m. He would arrive at Linzhou at 3 p.m. She just didn't know when the Jiao Pa would arrive at the venue. Knowing that Jiao Pa was coming, Zheng Tan's good mood became even better. Even his attitude towards the people who wanted to take photos with him became better. There were a lot of people taking photos in the morning, including some children. Fortunately, those children did not pull Zheng Tan's beard. They were quite well behaved. Hopefully, the afternoon would go smoothly as well. The competition in the morning was not ranked, but the group photo in the afternoon directly reflected who was more popular. Xiaogua had asked someone to set up the venue at noon. Now, it seemed that the shooting location was quite professional. The person in charge of taking photos was also a professional photographer in the team. This was an old man who had worked with Zheng Tan many times and was familiar with each other. At the beginning, a few young people, especially a few young men, came to take photos with Jin Ling. Jin Ling did not refuse. Now, some of the young people who were wandering outside were itchy. They quickly lined up to pay and take photos. Because of this, when the people whose goal was the cat and the people whose goal was Jin Ling were added together, there were more people in line. This was the brilliance of Xiaogua. We don't lose to cats, and we don't lose to girls. We have to grab both hands and be hard on both hands. However, everyone who came to take photos with the cat Xiaogua asked people to tell them that the cat could not be touched, especially the head. If they touched it, they would not be responsible for being caught or bitten. As long as they listened to their arrangements, everything would be safe and sound. For many people who knew cats, they felt that cats should be touched and scratched more on their chins to get close to them. However, the people at the scene told them that this black cat was different from him. They could not explain it even if they really wanted to. However, people who had taken photos knew that this cat looked difficult to get along with and had a black face. In fact, it was quite friendly to take photos. For example, it took the initiative to cooperate and pose for photos. 20 yuan for a photo. Although the photo was not big, it would be beautifully made. Moreover, the name, Green Wings, and the name and address of the pet center were printed on the back of the photo. Xiaogua would not give up any publicity opportunity. This was the psychology of people. Even if they were not interested in what everyone was doing, they would still want to join in the fun. Some people who only took photos with famous cats and champion cats also came to line up when they had free time. There were some props clothes on the side. People who were about to turn could go over and choose props clothes. A 6 or 7-year-old boy ran over and picked one. Then, he stood in front of the fitting mirror and looked at himself. He probably felt that he was so handsome in the clothes that he peed his pants. Yes, he really peed his pants. When Zheng Tan heard the people around him laughing, he looked over and found that the little kid in front of the fitting mirror was pursing his lips and crying out loud. His pants were wet, including the prop's clothes. There was a large wet urine stain. Sometimes, Zheng Tan felt that, in fact, the thoughts of children were quite strange. If they did not say it, you would not necessarily be able to guess what they were really thinking. There were many people taking photos. For Zheng Tan, this was actually not a troublesome thing. He just had to pose there and get a few kisses from a few ladies. However, the age range of these ladies was too big, from 8 years old to 68 years old. Zheng Tan accidentally found that his forehead had been kissed. There was also a 2 or 3-year-old child who kissed Zheng Tan's forehead and left a trail of saliva on Zheng Tan's head. No one knew what this little kid was thinking at that time. Seeing this, Charlie hurried over and wiped it with a paper towel, then a few more times with a wet towel. Seeing that Zheng Tan did not fly into a rage on the spot, Charlie was relieved in his heart. During this period, some people from the organizers came to watch the photo shoot, and there were also photographers. The organizers contacted Xiaogua and asked him to bring the cats to take photos at the end of the event. The cats in the photos were all cats that had won awards. Zheng Tan was the only house cat that had not won an award. The other 3 house cats were the first, second, and third house cats in the house cat group. However, in terms of popularity at the venue, Zheng Tan was still a lot more popular than them. At around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the event was coming to an end. The number of people taking photos gradually decreased, except for those who had already paid and lined up. Those who came later were all told that the event had ended. "Hey, sir, I'm sorry, but the photo shoot has ended. If you are interested, you can patronize our shop. If you have cats at home, you can also take a look at our brand. The quality is absolutely guaranteed." The people at the side of the photo area stopped the person who came over, but before he finished speaking, the people from the group behind him came over. "Teacher Jiao, why are you here? Are you here to pick up the cat?" The person who came over was an old acquaintance of Xiaogua's from the pet center. He was also one of the few people who knew that Zheng Tan was in the Jiao family. The person who came before saw that everyone knew each other, so he stopped talking and let Associate Professor Jiao go straight in. When Zheng Tan was taking photos with someone, he caught a glimpse of the Jiao Paws standing on the side. However, the Jiao Pa signaled him to continue with his work, so Zheng Tan did not go over. However, he was not in the mood to take photos. After taking the last photo, the Jiao Pa walked over and lifted Zheng Tan up as if he was holding a child. He threw him twice in the air and said, "You've gained weight." Zheng Tan was speechless. As expected of a scientific researcher, Zheng Tan could probably be accurate to 3 decimal places with just a shake of his hand. However, after the Chinese New Year, Zheng Tan did not lose all his weight. The Jiao Pa did not take Zheng Tan away. He had already heard that Zheng Tan would be taking photos with the winning cats on the stage during the closing ceremony. The photos would be put on the event records of the relevant organizations as a souvenir. There were fewer people at the closing ceremony than at the opening ceremony. Only some relevant organizations and the owners of the winning cats were present. Jing Tan stood on the stage, where there was a staircase. The winning cats were placed on top of it. Cats were not as obedient as dogs, so they had to hurry up. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if they got impatient or started to fight. Zheng Tan's seat was a little closer to the middle of the back row. A long-haired big guy was squatting next to him. It was about to squeeze into the middle, but when it saw Zheng Tan's eyes, it unconsciously moved in the opposite direction. It seemed to feel that it was not safe enough, so it moved a little closer. The Jiaopa was amused and took out his camera to take photos. The feelings of the cat owners in the audience were similar to the feelings of the parents when their children stood on the stage to receive an award after participating in a performance or competition. The person standing next to the Jiaopa saw what the Jiaopa was doing and asked, "Your cat is up there too?" Before the Jiaopa could answer, the person continued, "My son is up there. He is the champion of the kittens category. Hee, this little guy is showing the temperament of a champion at such a young age." The Jiaopa looked in the direction that the person was pointing. There were only 3 kittens on the stage. It did not know which one was the cat that the person was talking about. Just as the Jiaopa was looking at the stage and guessing, he heard the person next to him shout towards the stage, "Huang Shang, look over here. I am the father." The Jiaopa was speechless. There were 3 kittens over there, and one was Ginger. It was probably the little guy. The kitten called Huang Shang did not know if it heard it. Its flat face was a little serious, but its eyes were looking around. It was indeed quite clever. After the closing ceremony, the Jiaopa took Jing Tan out first. They would meet up at the hotel that Xiaoguo and the others had booked and go back to Chuhua City the next morning. The reason why the Jiaopa took Jing Tan out alone was that before entering the venue, he met Fang Xiaokong outside the venue with his children and pets. Fang Mingming said that she wanted to take a picture with Jing Tan. Fang Xiaokong did not want to interact with the people at the pet center, so he asked the Jiaopa to take Jing Tan out when he was free and they could all have a meal together. While Fang Mingming was taking pictures of Jing Tan and Dami with Fang Xiaokong's SLR camera, the Jiaopa and Fang Xiaokong were chatting on the side. "You will be able to get rid of the word vice soon after coming back, right? Congratulations in advance," said Fang Xiaokong. "Thank you. However, after the word vice is removed, there will be more challenges to face. There are many capable people now." The Jiaopa smiled and shook his head. "That's true. Even in famous universities in China, there are many strategic scientists." Chapter 241. They didn't chat with Fang Xiaokong and the others for too long. Zheng Tan and the Jiaopa returned to the hotel to meet up with Xiaoguo and the others. The next day, they returned to Chuhua City with the team. This time, Little Guo's harvest was quite bountiful. Xiaoguo, who was in a good mood, chatted with the Jiaopa and praised Zheng Tan to the skies. Zheng Tan ignored him. Since the Jiaopa had returned, Charlie didn't continue to stay with Zheng Tan. He took the opportunity to rest a little. Taking care of cats wasn't an easy task. Fortunately, Xiaoguo had promised to give him a raise. It was already evening when they returned to Chuhua City. When the bus passed by Chuhua University, Zheng Tan and the Jiaopa got off the bus. They didn't go anywhere else but went straight back to the villa complex. The Jiaopa didn't bring many things back. He only brought 2 bags and a simple outfit. Most of his luggage was checked in, so it was convenient for him to move around. He didn't need anyone's help. While they were still on the bus, the Jiaoma made a few phone calls to make dinner. It was rare that the family could have dinner together again after more than a year. The Jiao Yuan was absent-minded while eating. He kept glancing at his father's bag to see what gifts he had brought. Zheng Tan was also absent-minded while eating. He didn't care about the gifts, but he suddenly remembered that after the Jiaopa came back, he couldn't secretly surf the internet anymore. The Jiaopa was not like the Jiaoma. The Jiaopa was very meticulous. Zheng Tan thought about it. Although the Jiaopa always cleaned up his traces after surfing the internet, he couldn't be sure that it was completely cleaned up. He didn't expect the Jiaopa to come back so early. After the meal, the Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo went to look at the gifts. Zheng Tan squatted beside them and listened to little Pomelo and the Jiao Yuan talking about the gifts. However, his ears were perked up as he listened to the movements in the bedroom. The Jiao Pa had turned on his computer and was sitting in front of it. He was probably contacting some of his colleagues. Zheng Tan looked up. He didn't see anything strange with the Jiao Pa. The Jiao Pa didn't ask about the computer, which made Zheng Tan feel relieved. It's good that he didn't notice anything. I'll go to the science building first. The Jiao Pa stood up and said to the Jiao Ma, who was tidying up the living room. It's already so late. What are you going to do? Supervise the students? The Jiao Ma joked. Many students from the Institute of Biological Sciences would stay in the lab at night. They would only go back to the dormitory after 10 o'clock. No, I need to scan some documents and send it to someone. The Jiao Pa said. He didn't have any rigid rules for his students. As long as they could produce results, they could arrange their own time. All right. Treat your students to a meal. There are already 5 of them now. Yes, there will be more in the future. The Jiao Pa sighed. This year, 2 more students came to study under the Jiao Pa. Most of the undergraduate students had already graduated and left. Many of the master's students were still in school. Of the 2 new students, one came from a place far away, and the other came from a place in Chuhua City. One was from the school, and the other was from another province. One was a boy and a girl. Because the Jiao Pa wasn't around during the second round of postgraduate exams, and there were many students who applied for him, it took a long time to read the emails that the students sent to the Jiao Pa before the second round of exams. However, the Jiao Pa was busy at that time, so he didn't have time to read them carefully. He replied with a few sentences and asked another teacher in the institute to check the emails. Xianxia also helped to check the emails. After all, the Jiao Pa didn't want to see the members of a small team having conflicts. He also believed that Xianxia's eyes weren't bad. Speaking of which, the Jiao Pa hadn't seen the 2 new postgraduate students. Zheng Tan hadn't seen them either. He only heard a few words from the Jiao Ma when she was on the phone. However, when the Jiao Pa said, there will be more in the future, did it mean that the Jiao Pa was going to start recruiting more people? In the past, he only recruited 1 person. This year, he recruited 2 people. Next year, he will recruit 3 people. At this time, Chuhua University's Institute of Biological Sciences. Although most of the teachers' offices were empty, the students' self-study rooms and laboratories were still brightly lit. There were many people inside. Of course, this didn't necessarily mean that every student here was very hardworking. In the self-study rooms, there was air conditioning, internet, and they didn't have to worry about electricity bills. What's more, some students could even find a partner in the self-study room. How comfortable was that? However, those who were strictly controlled by the instructors and had planted eyes and ears in the self-study room were not so harmonious. Generally speaking, from the outside, without looking at the images on the students' computer screens, it was a very encouraging scene. In the Jiao Pa's office, Xian and Su Chu were chatting. At the same time, there were 2 other PhD students who had a good relationship with Su Chu. As for Zheng Jing, he was now in the laboratory teaching the new students to do experiments. There was a big watermelon on the table. Some of it was left for Zheng Jing and the 2 PhD students. The other 4 men were sharing it inside. They didn't stop eating the watermelon. Recently, the 2 PhD students had been too angry. It wasn't easy for them to find an opportunity to vent their anger. When they talked in the teacher's office, as long as the doors and windows were closed, no one outside could hear them. Moreover, at this time, many teachers weren't in the courtyard, so they weren't afraid of being overheard. Hey, what do you think Pimple Lu is like? If I were his father, I would have strangled him. But his father treats him like a treasure. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so arrogant all the time. Su Chu sat next to them and ate the watermelon quietly. He didn't take the initiative to talk. The 3 people in front of him were all seniors. Moreover, the 2 people who were criticizing their supervisor had nothing to do with Su Chu. It was even more inappropriate for him to interrupt. The 2 people who were complaining were Pimple Lu's PhD students. Like them, Xian was also a PhD student. She was a direct PhD student. When her classmates were in the 3rd year of postgraduate studies, She directly went to the first year of postgraduate studies. Therefore, here, Xin and the two people who were complaining were in the same year. This was also the reason why Su Chu didn't interrupt. In the group meeting last Friday, Pimple Lu went up and talked nonsense for a long time. After that, there was an awkward silence. I don't know what he was thinking. He asked the student to tell a joke. Tell a damn joke. Which supervisor would ask someone to tell a joke during a group meeting? If it wasn't funny, he wasn't satisfied. He looked down on people. F***C, he said it as if he was humorous and witty. The person who was sitting in the corner took 2 big bites of the watermelon as if he was venting his anger. What's wrong with that? Some time ago, he went to listen to a report. When he came out, he didn't look too good. He just happened to see me and asked me to laugh. Laugh his ass. Another Ph.D. student also said angrily. Just talking about this matter made him angry. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have applied for Pimple Lu's Ph.D. The Pimple Lu they were talking about was Lu Geta. Many students in the institute jokingly called him Pimple Lu in private. This name came out from the mouths of Professor Lu's students. The professor was in his 40s. His parents were famous people in the industry and were the kind of people who could take charge of big projects. Pimple Lu himself didn't have much ability, but under his profile on the institute's website, there were a lot of dazzling reputations, various articles with high impact factors, various big projects under his hands, and various titles. The students who applied for Pimple Lu were all deceived by these. This was because the supervisors had big projects in their hands and could happily distribute money to their students. It was also easier for them to produce results to decorate their personal files. When they graduated, they could find a good place to go. Unfortunately, his character was F***King Despicable. He was F***King Lying. This was what a lot of people were thinking. Everyone was fooled by that string of glory. Many of the teachers in the institute also couldn't stand Pimple Lu. They felt that this person didn't have much ability. He was nowhere to be seen all day, only took money but didn't do anything. He was a dog in the manger and didn't do anything. He hogged some positions but didn't do anything. None of the students under him produced any results, but he was still able to clinch all kinds of million-dollar projects. It couldn't be helped. His parents were too awesome and couldn't compete. This was also what Fang Xiaokong called a strategic scientist, sarcastically. He only thought about how to make money from projects. As for scientific research, didn't he have the old man and woman at home? When the time came, he could just go there and put his name on it, or directly put the results under his name. If he can say a few more good things about me during graduation, I'll endure it. I'm just worried that he'll embarrass me during the graduation thesis defense. A while ago, when a master's junior was doing his thesis defense, Pimple Lu mercilessly criticized that junior in front of so many judges. At that time, my junior's face turned green. Hey, tell me, which teacher would criticize his own student like shit in front of the other teachers in the academy? I'm not afraid of being criticized. After being with him for a year, I've become a lot more thick-skinned. I'll be fine as long as he doesn't deliberately stop me from graduating. Listening to the complaints of these two seniors, Su Chu felt that his supervisor was really too kind. Xian had the same thoughts as Su Chu. Although my boss doesn't have much power in the institute and is only an associate professor, he's really capable and kind to us. Let me tell you, even if he came here and saw us eating watermelon in his office and spitting out watermelon seeds, he wouldn't scold us. As soon as Xian finished speaking, the office door opened. Originally, Xian thought it was Zheng Jing. Only she, Su Chu, and Zheng Jing had the keys to the office. She didn't expect to see her supervisor standing at the door, who was supposed to be on the other side of the ocean. Jiao Pa looked at the watermelon seeds on the floor and was silent for 3 seconds. He glanced at the people in the office and then looked at Xian meaningfully. Xian broke out in a cold sweat. The big guy Su Chu hurriedly threw the watermelon in his hand into the trash bin. He didn't even have time to wipe his mouth. He stood up and stammered, "Beep, boss." The 2 PhD students sitting on the side didn't know Associate Professor Jiao, but when they heard Su Chu call him that, they understood. They quickly put down their crossed legs, called out, "Professor Jiao," and immediately ran away. You're back. I'll clean this place up immediately. Exen hurriedly asked Su Chu to pack up. Don't be in such a hurry. I'll take the materials and leave. Exen watched her supervisor take out the key, open the drawer, and leave with the materials. After Jiao Pa left, Su Chu gulped and looked at Exen. Senior, what should we do? Exen's face was bitter. She banged her head on the table and said, Oh no, my salary will be deducted. My perfect image in the boss's mind is ruined. In the laboratory on the 3rd floor, Zheng Jing was preparing the culture medium. She suddenly realized that she forgot to take a bottle. She didn't want to go back, so she shouted, Kung, help me get the sodium citrate on the table. Soon, a bottle of sodium citrate was placed next to Zheng Jing. Thank you. Junior, you did well. It didn't take you long to find the materials. I'll treat you to dinner. Professor Jiao. Zheng Jing lowered her head and weighed the samples. She didn't notice who was standing next to her. Now that she looked up, she saw her boss standing next to her. She was so shocked that she almost threw the bottle in her hand. She cursed in her heart, F***CK. When did the boss come back? Senior didn't tell him. Chapter 242. Exen and the others had been on tenterhooks, but they found that Associate Professor Jiao didn't say anything directly. After they came back, they did what they were supposed to do. They had a group meeting and asked Exen, Su Chu, and Zheng Jing to report the results of their work in the past year. Then Kaheng and Dai Tong, who had just joined, introduced themselves. Associate Professor Jiao had an impression of Dai Tong, who was from the same school. Generally speaking, she was a good and hard-working girl. Dai Tong was going to go abroad directly, but she was delayed by many things. She applied for the postgraduate entrance examination with other students and applied for Associate Professor Jiao's position. Because she was from the same school, she knew more about the teachers in the school. It could be seen that she really wanted to achieve something. Although Kuheng went to a university in another province, he was from Chuhua. This time, he came back directly after taking the postgraduate entrance examination. Among the several people in the group, he was the only one who didn't know Associate Professor Jiao. Therefore, when Exen and the others were worried that Associate Professor Jiao would call them over to talk, he was also on tenterhooks. He was afraid that he would leave a bad impression on them. At the end of the group meeting, Associate Professor Jiao asked them when they were free to go to his house for dinner. His wife would cook for them. The several students discussed for a while and decided on a Saturday. In fact, Jiao Ma wanted to ask Jiao Pa to invite the students to dinner outside, but Jiao Pa didn't think it was necessary to eat outside. Although the house was not big, it could accommodate 5 more people. If they couldn't, they could just squeeze in. It was cheaper to eat at home, so there was no need to be polite. At 6 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday, the sun was not so hot and there were many trees on the ground. At this time, many people gradually went out to eat. Not far from the eastern courtyard, a group of 5 people went to the courtyard. 3 of them were riding bicycles, and the other 2 were hitchhiking. Exin, who was leading the group, didn't have anyone on her bicycle. There were several bags of fruits hanging on her bicycle. It was better to buy something to eat at the boss's house, and the most practical thing was fruits. Hey, senior brother, last time you said that Teacher Jiao's wife was a good person. What about the other people in Teacher Jiao's family? For example, children and the elderly, Kuheng asked. Exen briefly told her about the 2 children from the Jiao family. Actually, Ms. Jiao's family is very nice. Oh, I almost forgot. Which one of you is afraid of cats? Teacher Jiao has a black cat called Black Charcoal at home. Kuheng and Dai Tong shook their heads. Not many people in their profession were afraid of small animals. Who knew how many white mice they had killed? Speaking of Teacher Jiao's cat, let me tell you. Su Chu had a lot to say when it came to this topic. He was the most emotional. It was all thanks to that cat that he was chosen. Hey, look ahead, Zheng Jing, who was riding his bike, interrupted Su Chu and pointed in a direction. They looked at where Zheng Jing was pointing and saw a black cat walking slowly under the shade of the trees on the sidewalk. That's Mr. Jiao's son, Black Charcoal, Exin said. Will it answer if I call it? Kuheng asked. Not necessarily. This cat is a bit special. Xian didn't say anything definite, but she thought to herself that it probably won't answer. Black charcoal. Kuheng shouted. They were riding faster than walking, and they were getting closer and closer to the cat. Although Kuheng's voice was not loud, the cat could definitely hear him. Unfortunately, the cats and birds in front of him ignored Kuheng and continued to walk slowly towards the courtyard. They didn't even pause for a moment. Big brother, are you sure that cat is Ms. Jiao's? Kuheng was confused. If the cat's name was correct, it might not answer you, but it would always respond, such as stopping to look around. But the cat in front of him didn't seem to hear him at all. Absolutely. The cat tag on its neck can prove it, Xian said with certainty. Xianxia didn't take off the cat tag when he was hanging around the campus. He had just walked around the courtyard and remembered that Jiao Ma said they would have dinner at 6:30, so he came back at this time. Of course, Xianxia had heard the person who called out to him. However, there were people who knew Xianxia when he walked around the school. After being called out so many times, Xianxia was too lazy to pay attention to those who were not on good terms with him, not to mention those who he had never heard of before. He was even more lazy to pay attention to them. When Xian and the others rode into the courtyard, they were already ahead of Xianxia. After parking the car, Xian led his junior brothers and sisters to Building B. Once again, he reminded them of the places they should pay attention to. Listen more, talk less. There are many important people in this building. If we leave a bad impression, it won't be good. Not only will we lose face for the mentors, we won't have an easy time either. When they arrived at the door, Xian didn't rush to ring the bell. She waited next to the door and made way for the card swipe area. Kuheng and the others watched the black cat walk slowly to the door. It glanced at them casually, then went to the card swipe area and jumped. Click. The iron door of the door opened. Go in, what are you waiting for? Xian pulled Kuheng and Dai Tong, who were stunned, and followed the black cat into the building. Damn, it's really the boss's cat. Kuheng sighed. Xian made a shu gesture. When they reached the third floor, they saw that Professor Lan's door was open. They felt nervous. Fortunately, Professor Lan didn't come out until they reached the fifth floor. It was not easy to come to the boss's house. Their hearts were beating fast, and they were worried about everything. Although they were nervous at first, they gradually felt relieved when they saw that the Jiao family was really as kind as Xian said. The living room was not big. Every time there were guests, the two children would set up a small table in the Jiao Yuan's room. Xianxia didn't join them in the living room, but went to the room to eat with the two children. During dinner, the Jiao Pa didn't talk about the experiments of the students, nor did he ask too much. Instead, he told them about the experience of participating in the research project abroad. He also told them about the research standards and the situation of the laboratories abroad. In the outside world, although the pay was very good, the competition and pressure were also quite great. Just like what many young professors who returned to China said when they had too much to drink, it was easy to survive in China, but difficult to survive outside. This was also one of the reasons why many people returned to China to develop their career. Naturally, they wanted to repay their alma mater and country. Of course, the country did hire some really capable people with high salaries, and also created good conditions for them to develop. However, not everyone could be so capable. Since they had chosen this path, they had to use the knowledge they learned to pave the way for themselves. Under the pressure of survival, many things were gradually drifting away from their original intention. Why did all those who studied this industry want to go abroad? Even if they went out for a stroll, they would still be able to make their records look better. Nowadays, the competition for jobs in the country was gradually increasing. Many colleges and universities had added an overseas experience when hiring teachers. It was not easy to get a job title or snatch a project. The most obvious point was that there were more and more young professors in China, but the quality of their jobs was decreasing sharply. Although it was unpleasant to hear, it was the truth. Another example was the professional title evaluation. It had gradually become a power exchange and money exchange. It had even become a game to compete for research funding. Every year, during the professional title evaluation season, there were always complaints from people who didn't get a senior title because of the research funding. Therefore, it was not a simple thing to walk down this path, climb up, and adapt to the rules here. Many people would only understand this when they reached that step. The Jiaopa said a lot of things selectively. He was afraid that the students would lose their enthusiasm if he said too much. The Jiaopa also asked a few of the students about their summer vacation plans. In fact, many graduate students did not have a summer vacation. Even if the school's website said that they had a summer vacation, everyone knew that summer vacation basically did not exist. This was especially true for schools like Tsinghua University and Xian's majors. The Jiaopa was very nice to his students. If the students wanted to go home, they just had to write a leave request and tell them the specific time. After all, the students were at school, so he had to be responsible for them. Zheng Tan was in the room listening to the conversation in the living room. Zheng Tan was not interested in the things they were talking about. However, after the meal, the conversation between the teacher and students aroused Zheng Tan's curiosity. Not only Zheng Tan, but Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo also heard it. The Jiaopa would go out with the group of students who were going to do field internships during the summer vacation. Every year, the Faculty of Biological Sciences of Tsinghua University would be brought out to do field internships during the summer vacation of the second semester. Before little Pomelo came to the Jiao family, Jiao Yuan was still young. At that time, the Jiaopa brought the students to the field internship and took Jiao Yuan with him. Jiao Yuan had always been thinking about when he could go out again. He had been waiting until now. Now that he heard that the Jiaopa was going to the field internship again, his heart began to itch. He was thinking about what to bring. After Xian and the others left, Jiao Yuan could not wait to ask the Jiaopa if the Jiaopa would bring them out to play during the summer vacation. The Jiaopa only replied with one sentence, "It depends on your performance." The so-called performance, Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo knew in their hearts, probably depended on the results of the final exams. Even if they could not get into the top few, they could not do too badly. Therefore, the few magazines with sexy covers and thick novels with yellow covers that were under Jiao Yuan's bed disappeared. Zheng Tan wanted to take advantage of the fact that there was no one at home and he could not go online to look for them. However, he did not find anything. Although Jiao Yuan was a child with all kinds of restlessness of adolescence, if he really decided to do something well, he would definitely treat it seriously and eliminate all sources of interference. If Zheng Tan wanted to look at those magazines and novels, he would have to wait until Jiao Yuan finished his exams. Zheng Tan was indeed very curious about the field internship, but unfortunately, Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo were busy preparing for the final exams and did not talk about other topics. Zheng Tan could only eavesdrop at night from the corner of the master bedroom to get some information. The Jiaopa was not the teacher leading the team this time. He just wanted to take the opportunity to bring his family out for a walk. After all, Tsinghua was very hot during the summer vacation, and the children could not do much at home, so it was better to take them out to have some fun. Although it would definitely be very tiring to go on an internship, this was one of the reasons why the Jiaopa wanted the two children to go. They had to train more and increase their knowledge. The field internship organized by the academy was from mid-July to the end of July. Counting the time on the way back, it would last about 2 weeks. There were a few buses booked by the academy. Since the Jiaopa wanted to bring his family and a cat along, he did not take the bus with the others. He drove his own car and followed along. There were also other teachers from the school who drove their own cars. After all, there were some people from other schools in the team. The teachers from the school had to be careful, so they would not be accused of being greedy. Chapter 243. In the back seat of the car, Zheng Tan sat with the two kids, listening to Jiao Yuan telling little Pomelo about the time he went to the field practice base with Jiaopa. Jiao Yuan did well in the final exam, so he spoke with confidence. The tense atmosphere before the exam was finally gone. Jiao Yuan was still young at that time. Even if he saw a lot of things, he might not be able to remember them clearly. After all, his ability to accept things was limited at that time, so he didn't know much. He only thought about running around and having fun. What connected his memories were a set of photos taken at that time and a few specimens that he collected under Jiaopa's guidance. There were plants and insects among the specimens, but they were inconvenient to carry around, so they were all left at home. Jiao Yuan only had a photo album with him. Just this photo album alone was enough to keep Jiao Yuan's mouth shut. It took about 7 hours to drive from Chuhua City to the field practice base, so Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma took turns to drive. Otherwise, they would be too tired. The group of people took a short break midway to let the students go to the toilet or something. As for those who were carsick, their faces were pale. Fortunately, the teachers leading the group were experienced. Other than plastic bags, they also prepared some medicine. When Zheng Tan woke up, he looked out of the car window and saw that there were many mountains around. Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo were looking at a map next to him. They also had a small flashlight in their hands. Sometimes, when they were in a cave, he would turn on the flashlight just to satisfy his craving. This place was very close to the field practice base that Jiao Pa mentioned. The purpose of the so-called field internship was to bring the freshmen out to see and get closer to nature. The freshman courses included botany and zoology, and some majors even involved ecology. The purpose of the field internship was to let them experience it firsthand and identify some plants and animals. Of course, it wasn't just for fun. The students who participated in the field internship had to write a report after the internship. For Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo, this was basically their summer vacation. It was the same for Zheng Tan. He strolled around the campus of Chuhua University. Although the campus was very green and occupied a large area among the universities in the country, it was still a small place. Zheng Tan also had the experience of wandering outside, but the place he went to at that time was not so mountainous. The feeling of mountains and plains were always different. The feeling of wandering and vacationing were also poles apart. At around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they arrived at their destination. The field practice base of Chuhua University was built on a mountain. Zheng Tan noticed that many places on the mountain were well built. The roads and the planned houses all gave off a modern mountain city vibe. It was not like the kind of life that many people imagined. Of course, this was only the scenery on a small part of the mountain. Looking from afar, one could see the continuous mountain peaks. During July and August, the temperature in Chuhua City could soar to more than 40 degrees. If one were to break an egg on the road, it would be cooked very quickly. However, in the field practice base, when one opened the car window, one could clearly feel that the temperature was a few degrees lower than in Chuhua City. Before they came, they heard that there was no electric fan installed in the field practice base. Some of the students were worried that they would be cooked. After experiencing the summer in Chuhua City, they could not help but worry when they heard that there was no electric fan or air conditioning. However, when these students came out of the bus and walked into the dormitory arranged for them in the field practice base, they were immediately relieved. Before they came, they had already done the statistics, so they had already been allocated the rooms. The Jiao family had 4 people in a small single room, which was prepared for some of the teachers who led the team. There were 4 beds in each room, and the Jiao family directly occupied one of the rooms. This way, it was more convenient for Zheng Tan to move around. He did not have to stay in the bag all the time. The room had already been cleaned, so it was still quite clean. After all, it was the teacher's room. As for the students' room, the conditions were not as good as the teacher's room. The students had bunk beds, 4 to 8 beds. They also had a separate bathroom. Even if it was not as good as the teacher's room, the conditions were still passable. After installing the mosquito net, Jiao Ma laid out the bed sheets that she brought. The 4 of them took a shower and had a good afternoon sleep. After eating dinner in the field practice base's cafeteria, the Jiao Pa brought the children to the conference hall to listen to a lecture. The main purpose of the evening meeting was to mobilize the students. It was to talk about the various things that they had to pay attention to during the internship, emphasize on organizational discipline, and conduct a simple training for the students. Before they came, the students had already learned about the internship. Although there were still many things that they did not understand, as long as they followed the teachers, everything would be simple. The teachers would usually bring along a first aid kit in case of emergencies. The children nowadays were very precious, and if anything happened to them, the teachers would not be able to bear the consequences. Zheng Tan was also brought into the conference hall. The Jiao Pa hoped that everyone would listen carefully in case anything went wrong. After all, there were many mountains around, and this place was a nature reserve. It was hard to say what they would encounter in the summer. There would definitely be many snakes, insects, rats, and ants. Zheng Tan was nestled in the bag, and the Jiao family were sitting at the side. No one would notice Zheng Tan in the bag. Zheng Tan did not look around openly either. After listening to the lecture for a while, he felt drowsy. Along with the teachers and students of Tsinghua University, there were also people from other schools. They did not have an internship base here, so every year, they would come along with the people from Tsinghua University. At night, in this unfamiliar place, Zheng Tan did not feel uncomfortable sleeping. The room was filled with the scent of familiar people. He lay on little Pomelo's bed. He slept a lot during the day, so he was in good spirits at night. This place was very quiet, and if he listened carefully, he could hear the sounds of some animals that he could not normally hear. Just like what the person in the report said today, this was a city surrounded by nature. Perhaps many people in the city felt that being close to nature was a very good experience. The air was fresh and it was quiet enough. But in reality, if those people were really allowed to come here, they might not be able to bear it. When they first arrived here today, a few boys wandered around the area. They did not go out of the range of the base. When they came back, they had an empty drink bottle with a big black insect in it. Zheng Tan had never seen it before. They asked a few students, but none of them knew what it was. They only said that it might be some kind of insect of the order Coleoptera, so they took it to the teachers who specialized in insects. A few of the girls almost screamed when they saw it. They probably would not develop their studies in insects in the future. Therefore, it was clear that not everyone could live in the mountains. The next day, the teachers were not in a hurry to bring the students out. Instead, they brought the students to the Lingshan City Museum of Nature, which was not far from the internship base. Zheng Tan stayed in the backpack and was brought in by the Jiaopa. Logically speaking, they were not allowed to casually bring things in. But now that they were a group of university students and teachers, the guards at the entrance and the management staff of the museum did not really care. They even chatted with a few of the teachers for a while. It seemed like they knew each other. The person in charge of the museum only paid attention to not let the students cause any damage. Zheng Tan stayed in the backpack and peeked out through the gap of the zipper. The backpack had been modified by the Jiaoma, and there was an additional gauze section. If people outside did not look carefully, it would be difficult to see what was in the backpack. However, Zheng Tan could see outside through the gauze and did not have to worry about being too stuffy in the backpack. Zheng Tan was not very interested in the plant specimens, and the students were obviously the same. That was until they came to the animal exhibition area. Most of the animals seen in zoos could be seen here, and there were many that had not been seen in zoos. However, the animals here were just specimens. There was no life in them, and there was no light in their eyes. Looking at the lifelike but lifeless specimens, Zheng Tan suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He did not know what the animals were thinking when they were made into specimens. Perhaps they were already dead before they were made into specimens. A few teachers and museum staff were explaining to the students over there. The main types of animal specimens are soaked specimens, peeled specimens, skeletal specimens, dried specimens, and slide specimens. Immersion specimens were specimens that were preserved in immersion liquid in their original form after the animal was killed and not dissected. Peeled specimens are usually used for vertebrates, such as birds and mammals. You need to peel off the skin of these vertebrates, remove the muscles on the skin, apply preservatives on the inner surface of the skin, fill in the prosthesis, install artificial eyes, and suture and reshape the specimen. Zheng Tan looked out through the gauze. After the teacher in front finished his explanation, he let another person continue. The person behind him was responsible for making specimens. The person in charge of the explanation was a zoology teacher from the Institute of Biological Sciences of Tsinghua University. There were also a few botany teachers. Some of the samples involved in their research project came from some areas in Tangshan City, so they were naturally familiar with the people here. The specimen maker led the students to a corner where some tools were placed. I only took them out for you to see because you are here. I wouldn't even give them to other people. The specimen maker pointed out the tools to the students as if he was presenting a treasure. At the same time, he talked about the industry of specimen making. To put it in perspective, the standard of living of people nowadays is better. They have pets and have built deep relationships with them. However, when the pet dies, the owner will feel great pain. However, if the dead pet is made into a real specimen with a complete structure, not only can it be entrusted to the owner's grief, it can also be preserved for a longer time. **T. If Zheng Tan could speak, he probably would have cursed out loud to refute this. Looking at the Jiao family next to him, Jiao Yuan had a look of disdain on his face. Little Pomelo also frowned, obviously disagreeing with the man's words. Because of the angle, Zheng Tan could not see the expressions of Jiao Ma and Jiao Pa. The specimen maker continued to explain the use of the scalpel, tweezers, scissors, steel wire pliers, files, hammers, saws, nails, lead wires, needles, and other tools. Many of the chemical agents were not very safe, so he did not take them out. He only mentioned some of them when he was explaining to the students, such as arsenic dioxide, arsenic, potassium aluminum sulfate, alum, phenol, lysol, etc. Most of the specimens are made using the method of partial prosthesis and partial filling. The general process is skinning, preserving, prosthesis making, filling, ocular prosthesis making, suturing, and the whole process of finishing. When skinning, the abdomen is cut open and the whole body is taken out in pieces. Listening to the man's words, Zheng Tan stayed in the backpack and felt a chill run down his spine. From what the specimen maker said, he felt that this profession was a beautiful profession that could bring the dead back to life. He loved this profession. In Zheng Tan's eyes, the specimen maker was one of his natural enemies. Chapter 244. On the third day of their arrival at the internship base, the students who had been divided into groups left the internship base with their respective teachers. The 4 members of the Jiao family were with one of the groups. The 2 teachers in that group had a good relationship with Jiao Pa. They talked about their experiences as teachers when they were walking in the forest. When they went out into the wild, everyone wore long sleeves, long pants, and hiking shoes. They also wore sun hats. There were many insects and mosquitoes in the forest on the mountain. Although it was daytime, they knew how powerful the mosquitoes were after entering the forest. That was why the students were carrying toilet water, essential oil, and some anti-mosquito agents in their bags. Zheng Tan didn't think much of it. First, he was wearing a cat skin as a layer of protection. Second, he was used to it. He was always in the forest, so he didn't think it was a big deal. Wearing something else would be a hindrance. The teacher in charge introduced some plants to the students as they walked. If they felt it was valuable as a specimen, they would collect it and make it into a specimen at home. As for the plants that were common in Chuhua City, they didn't want to waste their time. On the first day of their field practice, the teacher in charge didn't plan to bring the students to a remote place. Instead, they walked along the winding road. The cement road was very smooth, and it was probably mainly used for tourism. After the number of people had decreased, they didn't see many cars along the way. On the contrary, they could see 1 or 2 brave crabs in the middle of the road. People were like mantises trying to stop a chariot, but these crabs were trying to stop a chariot with their bare arms. Although there were no cars, there were many people. Jiao Yuan followed the students. Every time they saw a crab on the road, they would rush up with a bottle. Jiao Yuan didn't need to reach out his hand to catch the crabs. One of the students was chasing the crabs from behind. Jiao Yuan held the bottle in front of the crabs and waited for the crabs to climb into the bottle. However, the smarter and faster crabs were not so easy to catch. Crabs crawled faster than prawns, and some of them slipped down the slope and into the stream below. A crab crawled toward Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan raised his claws and quickly flipped it towards Little Pomelo. Little Pomelo was prepared. She was not afraid of the crab. She took the bottle and covered it. The other students naturally came over to help. They would not give up this opportunity to curry favor with the teacher's child. If they helped the teacher's child, perhaps the teacher would let them off during the final exam and not fail. Along the way, the group caught a lot of crabs. Except for a few people who used their own bottles to keep 1 or 2 crabs, the rest of the crabs were put into a bag first. After walking for a while, the group deviated from the main road and climbed up the mountain. There was still some life in the surrounding area. Sometimes, they could see 1 or 2 villagers living on the mountain. However, unlike the well-built houses near the base, these villagers' houses were very simple and tile-roofed. Along the way, the teachers in charge not only told the students about the plants they saw, but also about the insects they knew. The Jiaopa also said something to the 2 children. "Hey, there's a cat," the Jiao Yuan said, pointing at a place. Zheng Tan looked in the direction the Jiao Yuan was pointing. There was indeed a cat running there, and it quickly left the group's sight and hid in the bushes. By the time the slower people looked over, the cat had already disappeared. The cat was probably scared away by the commotion caused by the group of people here. "That should be a stray cat," one of the teachers in charge said. "There are many stray cats here. Some of them are domestic cats that returned to the wild. After a few generations of breeding, they became stray cats." After saying that, the teacher still felt uneasy. He reminded the students, "You have to be careful when you see stray cats on the mountain. These cats are different from your domestic pets. They are grumpy, but they haven't been vaccinated. Who knows how many germs they carry when they run around the mountain. It's better to stay away from them in the future." The group looked at Associate Professor Jiao's cat, which didn't use a leash and had been following them without causing any trouble. Then they thought about the cat they saw just now, which disappeared without a trace. It was indeed the difference between a domestic cat and a stray cat. Cats are very wild, and they have a strong survival ability. When they return to the wild, many of them survive. It's a pity that the birds are missing. 2 years ago, people from the Bird Protection Association came to catch the cats, and not long after, cat lovers' organizations came to denounce them. Another teacher said. Zheng Tan sighed in his heart. Sure enough, cat lovers and bird lovers' organizations don't get along well. Probably feeling that this topic was not a good one for the students, and it could easily cause conflict, the teacher leading the team did not continue. He changed the topic and said, "Do you think we might find an albino animal this time?" Hey, in your dreams. Albino animals are not that easy to find. Even the expedition team can't guarantee that they will encounter them every time. Many of them are found by chance. The probability is too low, another teacher said with a smile. You said it was a chance event. No one can say for sure when we will meet one. It might even be an albino animal. Dream on. If we really meet an albino animal, don't talk about the overwhelming reports, even the leaders in our institute will tremble. Unfortunately, those are only according to the data. Although there have been expedition teams that have seen red-haired bats and the like, and last year, someone in a nearby village said that they saw red-haired wild boars, there is no convincing evidence. Those overseas people don't even acknowledge the existence of albino species. In the authoritative international magazines, they can only say that no red-haired mammal has been found so far. Even if we catch a red-haired rat, it will be a major event and big news in the world. Therefore, the so-called albino animals were only rumors and legends. Jiao Pa thought of something and laughed. In the past, people joked that if we really found an albino animal in its natural state, it could only be found in the area of Tangshan City. Albino animals could also be obtained after a long period of careful artificial breeding and protection. For example, the commonly used white mice in the laboratory. Artificial mutation and breeding could indeed create a lot of things, but the albino animals in their natural state had more research value. People in the circle who studied albino animals knew the research value of albino and albino animals, especially the albino animals. The last few sentences were whispered. Only the 2 lead teachers and Jiao Pa could hear them. The students who were resting under the shade of a tree not far away did not pay attention to them. Zheng Tan perked up his ears to listen to their conversation. According to the 2 lead teachers, many albino animals had been found in Tangshan City. There were also many mammals, such as albino squirrels, foxes, bears, and so on. Some people once thought that the emergence of albino animals was due to the development of human beings and the expansion of their range of activities, which led to the gradual reduction of the animals' living space, population reduction, and degeneration due to inbreeding. However, some people also felt that since albino animals existed in Tangshan City since ancient times, and there were more of them than other places in the world, it was unlikely that it was a pure albino phenomenon. There might be other unknown reasons. When it came to unknown reasons, Zheng Tan's imagination ran wild. For example, mysterious organizations, aliens, and so on. However, it was just a thought. If someone really said that it was because of aliens, Zheng Tan would not necessarily believe it. Just like what Xiao Pa said, there were many more unknown species on Earth than known species. Although human knowledge was improving, there were still many unsolved mysteries. Perhaps, when civilization developed to a certain extent, these mysteries could be solved. He just did not know if the mystery of cats with a human heart could be solved. Zheng Tan was just thinking that if the albino animals were really found, would they be immediately made into specimens? Later, he realized that if they were really caught, they would definitely be treated as an extremely precious species. It was true that the rarer something was, the more valuable it was. Moreover, to these researchers, the value of the albino animals was incomparable to other animals. Zheng Tan had killed white mice before, but he had not encountered any red mice. Zheng Tan was also looking forward to meeting an albino animal. That way, the trip would not be in vain. On the first day of the field trip, when the students returned, they were so tired that they went into their rooms and lay on their beds. They were not as energetic as they were 2 days ago. It was said that another group encountered a snake that fell directly from a tree and almost hit a student below. Until now, the student was still in shock. It was also said that another group of students was hit on the back of the hand by an unknown species of mosquito-sized insect. Although the insect quickly fell to the ground and crawled away, the back of the student's hand was quickly swollen like a pig's trotter. It was said that the student was unable to leave the base for a few days. However, Zheng Tan felt that the day was not too bad. After dinner, he was still in the mood to go out for a walk. The two children took a bath and went to sleep. Under the gaze of Xiao Pa, Zheng Tan jumped out of the window, climbed over the wall of the base, and walked on the cement road outside. The surrounding area was surrounded by 2- or 3-story villas. It seemed that many of the people living in the area had some wealth. Looking into the distance, all he could see were mountains of varying heights. Lights could only be seen in villages and towns where people lived, but they were only in small patches. Compared to the forest under the night sky, the bright areas were pitifully small. As he walked along the mountain, Zheng Tan suddenly smelled a faint scent. It was difficult to smell it with a human's sense of smell. Zheng Tan could only smell it because of his cat's nose. This scent made Zheng Tan feel very uncomfortable. It reminded him of the specimens he saw in the museum. He knew that many people liked to decorate their homes with wild animal specimens, such as deer heads. There were many such examples in this place, but Zheng Tan felt that something was wrong. Although he was curious, he knew that he was not familiar with this place. It also made him feel a chill. He could not take the risk, so Zheng Tan decided to leave. But before Zheng Tan could walk far, he saw a shadow flash by. In the night, the shadow quietly approached the house that Zheng Tan was looking at. When it approached, the guy even glanced in Zheng Tan's direction. Looking into those eyes, Zheng Tan felt that all the hair on his body stood up. That was a guy who had survived in the natural survival of the fittest. It was not a pet that stayed at home all day and did not have to worry about food.